In 2024, I introduce you to Shelve It or Scrap It, a monthly reading challenge where I read randomly selected books from these stacks on the floor of my library. The goal was to get all of the books from the floor onto my shelves or scrapped into my unhaul pile by the end of the year. We started 2024 with 70 books in the stacks, but despite shelving 35 books and scrapping 57 books throughout the year, holding 64 less books than in 2023 and thus making a positive dent in my own TBR as a whole, we actually ended the year with one more book in the stacks than when we started. So in 2025, I have to up my game. The rules remain the same, but I now have to read the same amount of books per episode as I've hauled in the previous month, so that by the end of this year, I will hopefully reach my ultimate goal of getting all of the stacks off the floor and into a proper home, either on my shelves or on somebody else's. In episode 14, I shelved 2 books and I scrapped 4. And we are going to be starting episode 15 with 64 books in the stacks. Hello my guys, welcome back to episode 15 of Shelve It or Scrap It, where I try and get these stacks of books behind me onto my bookshelves through any means possible. Now we are of course starting episode 15 here, so if this is the first time you are encountering Shelve It or Scrap It, then I will leave a link to the full playlist below so that you guys can catch up at your own leisure. However, for those of you guys who are caught up and locked and loaded and ready for episode 15, buckle up because I feel like it's going to be a long one. I have a lot going on in April, and so I am harnessing the power of multitasking to bring you guys this episode, and we're going to be doing things slightly differently this month. So first off, I'm going to refer you guys to my April TBR because for the first time ever, I have picked some of the books that I'm going to be reading for Shelve It or Scrap It in advance. There are a couple of reasons for this. The first and most important one, in my opinion, is that for April, as always, as with every year, I am participating in the Magical Readathon, which is my favorite readathon of all time. So this is a readathon that is created and hosted by G over at Book Roast, where you attend a fictional magic school where you pick a career that you may like to go into, and you are given like a course list of subjects that you have to pass to be able to go into that career and achieve that calling. So I will of course link the announcement video for Magical Readathon down in my description box in case it sounds like something that you guys would like to participate in. I highly recommend it. I love how immersive and creative it is, and I love like the magic school vibes, of course. But if you guys don't want to do that much research, that is fine. All you guys need to know is that I am going to be using the books in the stacks to fulfill the Magical Readathon prompts that I need. And if you want to know what books I'm reading for the first 6 prompts, you can go ahead and watch my April TBR, or just continue watching this video where I will explain it to you as we go along. The second and the most time-consuming thing that I have coming up in April is that I'm going to China for 2 weeks, which is the main reason why I have had to pick the first set of books that we need to read for Shelve It or Scrap It in advance, because I am going to be taking Shelve It or Scrap It on tour. I'm not only going to be taking Shelve It or Scrap It to China, actually, I'm also going to be taking Shelve It or Scrap It to London with me for a trip that I have a little after I come back from China. So this is going to be the Grand World Tour episode. So I've loaded up my Kindle with a selection of the books from the stacks using Libby, so that I obviously don't need to carry these books with me on my travels, but we can go ahead and make progress on this episode while I'm away. And then if there's any books that I read while I'm away that we're going to shelve, I will resolve those when I get back home. So that's kind of how we are going to be proceeding with this episode. But when I left you at the end of episode 14, we had 56 books in the stacks, but I was aware that there was going to be a little bit of an increase going into episode 15 because I hadn't added my February unboxing books to the stacks, and I also received a PR package from Source Books that contained another 4 books that I would be adding to my TBR. So after the addition of those, we are now sitting at 64 books in the stacks, which isn't great, but I do anticipate we are going to have a significant decrease in this episode because, as per the rules of 2025, I have to read the same amount of books for each episode of Shelve It or Scrap It as I hauled in the previous month, and in March I hauled 10 books total. So this is going to be our biggest episode to date following these new rules. So the first 6 books are the ones that I've already loaded onto my Kindle, ready to take to China with me, and are also the ones that fulfill fulfill the prompts that I need to complete my magical readathon TBR. However, there are only 6 books here and magical readathon has 12 prompts in total, 6 that I need to complete, 6 that I don't. So my plan right now is to read these 6 books, hopefully when I'm in China, although I actually only anticipate reading 2 of the 6 because I tend to read like 1 book per week when I'm away. And then for the remaining 4, we are going to fulfill 4 more of the magical readathon prompts using the books in the stacks. I know that I don't need to achieve those prompts, but I think just to serve as a guide for this episode of what I choose to read, we are going to be following that structure. So that was a lot of information. I hope you all followed it. And right now, I don't know what book we're going to be starting with because I'm going to decide when I'm on the road. So your guess is as good as mine. So the first book that I had picked up is The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song. This one, it was a fairy loot book. I can't remember at this point whether it came in the YA or the adult fairy loot, and I don't have the physical book. I'm just traveling with my Kindle. I'm in Hong Kong right now, pretty much just arrived. And on the various travel modes that we took over here, I read 40%. So this one is a Mulan retelling about a girl whose father is abusive and the country is about to go to war. So they've sent a draft and her dad is an opium addict, so he's like, I'm not gonna go. I don't want to, I can't be bothered. And he expects his daughter to marry a man to bring money to the family, which will essentially save the family from poverty for a little bit longer because of her father's opium addiction and all of the debts that he's like accrued because of that. And she actually really likes her stepmother and also has younger siblings that she doesn't want to see like become destitute. So she kind of goes along with this for a bit, and she finds out that this man that she maybe has to marry, she doesn't have a lot of good prospects because of her father. She finds out that the man that she has to marry is also abusive, and she's just sick of the role that women are supposed to perform in life in this society. And so she decides that this is not going to be a fate for her and that she is actually going to enlist into the army, where she obviously is terrified that they're going to find out that she's a woman, but also she is very aware that she's at a disadvantage because she's like smaller and weaker than the majority of the men there. So she puts a lot of extra effort into training and becomes close to a prince that is, I think he's the youngest prince, but just before she decided to enlist, she actually met him by chance and they had like a very light flirtation thing going on. So obviously like we're building some chemistry between them, but now that she's enlisted in the army, he thinks that she's a boy, so it's more of a friendship and a camaraderie that is growing between them. I'll be honest, I'm not loving this one. I'm not finding it especially engaging. I think it's fine and I'm not enjoying reading it, but there's just some things that happen in the story, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know whether it's because I'm traveling. Obviously I'm quite sleep deprived now. I've been traveling for 25 hours and I slept for like 5 hours in the middle of that on a long haul flight, so I'm not the best rested for sure. But sometimes I'm reading it and I'm just like, I don't really know why this is happening. Like, I don't understand the magic system. Her mother had a madness, quote unquote a madness, and said that she could see spirits, and everyone did think that she was mad. And the main character has kind of inherited this along with a pendant that her mother wore, that I think is the key to these magical abilities, which are tied to, they call the cardinal spirits, like the spirit of north, south, east and west. So like east is a dragon, I think, and is south is the phoenix, I think. So the magic's like tied to that, and the main character can kind of harness power because of this. This is something that is, well, it's not even that it's looked down upon within her country, people just don't believe that it's real, and there is potential for other areas of the world to have different thoughts about that. So I guess it's not like I feel a super hard magic system, or at least there hasn't been a great deal of explanation into it. If it was to be hard, like I don't know the rules or the limits of it at this point, and that is my preference. I like to have rules and limits within every aspect of my life. And then in terms of just the general narrative, like sometimes I feel like things are just coming out of left field and I'm like, I don't quite understand how we get here, but like I said, that could be me. It really could be me. So at this point I'm not going to DNF it. I will say that it's probably unlikely that I'm going to DNF any of the books that I read, at least while I'm traveling, because I am distracted, and sometimes it's just nice to read something, like the act of reading as a little bit of a break, or like in the travel portions between like the actual activities. So I don't foresee myself actually DNFing this book, but I'm not super engaged in it right now, and I do feel like if I was at home, this one would be a goner by now. But it could get better. Like, there's been plenty of books I've read in the past that get better at the end. Doesn't mean I'm going to keep it, even if it does, but it doesn't mean that all hope is lost. I am in my hotel room in Beijing and I've made a mess of my suitcase, so I'm going to do some repacking, and while I do that I'm going to talk to you about The Night Ends with Fire because I'm like 78% of the way through it now, and at this point I am enjoying it quite a bit more than I was to start off with, which is obviously great news. I'm still not like super attached to it though, and like I said, I do think that that is partially because I am traveling, and so I'm a little bit all over the place. I'm not reading every day. I'm reading a couple of chapters here, a couple of chapters there, so like I could definitely be more grounded, and I'm definitely finding that I will like pick it up and not know why we're in the situation that we're in because I don't remember like what happened properly the last time that I read it. But we've had a change of location at the point where I'm at, where we've been here. Like I said, memory all over the place. Can't tell you exactly how much of the book we've been in this section, but I've been enjoying it a lot more since the setting has changed. So the majority of the beginning of this book, with it being a Mulan retelling, is definitely about the training, like the main character joining the army, disguising themselves as a boy, and then training for the army and having to work so much harder than everyone else. While this is happening, as I mentioned to you guys, they are getting closer to the prince character, and eventually, like, you know, shit happens. Action ensues. As you may have guessed, with this being a book about the army, they do of course end up going to war, which involves some traveling, and they end up in like new and different situations. Now, since we've had this change of scenery, we've also had the introduction of a new character who is a little bit of a villain, well, 100% a villainous character, but I would say that they're also quite morally grey. And we obviously, with this being a Mulan retelling, we started establishing a romance between the main character and the prince, but now we also are potentially, genuinely I can't tell, I don't know whether I'm just programmed to read romance in these situations because of how many like anti-hero, morally grey, villainous romances that I've read, but I feel like there could be something here as well. Like, our main character has definitely mentioned more than once that she finds this guy attractive, and I feel like there is a little bit more chemistry and tension in their scenes than I've seen with her interacting with the prince, so I'm kind of enjoying their dynamic right now, and that has definitely deepened my enjoyment. Now, I know that this book came in a fairy loot, I'm pretty sure, but I really couldn't remember whether it was an adult or a YA one, and I mean, I could very easily look that up, but I haven't. But I'm pretty sure at this point that it came in the adult, because as we've got further into it, it has started dealing with some darker topics. We have threat of sexual assault. Like, a lot of this is related to sexism. Obviously, gender is a big topic discussed in this book because our main character disguises herself as a man and joins the army to escape the future that is set out for her by men, as she is a woman. Threat of sexual assault and men abusing their power is a topic that comes up multiple times throughout this book. And then we also, because we are dealing with war, have some pretty gnarly torture scenes throughout here. They're not the most graphic I've ever read, but they're also because I wasn't sure. Obviously, I wasn't getting super adult vibes from it until we started getting into those scenes that are a little bit more graphic. So yeah, at the minute, like, I'm having a good time with it. I'll be honest, I think it's highly unlikely that I'm going to be continuing on with this series, which makes me feel like it is going to be a scrap, but I'm glad that in the, I guess, second half of the book, it has taken a turn for the better and that I'm having a much better time with it now. So I've checked into my hotel in Cheyenne a couple of hours ago, but it is 11:40 p.m. right now. We arrived a lot later than we were meant to. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about The Night Ends with Fire, which I have finished, while I get ready for bed because I have to be up at 6:30 in the morning to cycle on the city wall. So I need to sleep, and to be honest, I don't even know if it's going to happen because I've eaten pretty recently and I shouldn't have done, and I can't really sleep on a full stomach. But anyway, back to the book. I have finished it. I have not put it through my spreadsheet because quite honestly I cannot be bothered. My gut feeling right now is that it is a 2 or a 3 stars. I'm pretty confident that it is going to be coming out as one of those. I just don't know which one right now. It feels like a 2, but I do think that if I'd have read it where I could have given it more attention, then I would have maybe given it a 3, because I would have just been paying attention just that little bit more. And it's not that I don't know what happened or anything like that. It is more just that I lacked an attachment to it. I feel like there would have been areas of it that I enjoyed more had I been able to give it like more attention and had less distractions. I think for me, like I said in the last update, the thing that I enjoyed the most about this was the potential romantic relationship that we had that was introduced in the latter half of the book. I do think at this point, like, I'm pretty confident that that is going to develop into something more, and I do feel like that is going to cause a point of conflict in the further books. I mean, it already does throughout this one, but I do feel like it's something that is going to continue throughout this series. And if I'm being honest, if I were to continue on with this series, that would be the only reason why. I didn't feel a deep attachment to the main character, and I felt myself like complaining about her in this book and being like, oh my god, like I don't care about what you're going through right now, like I don't care about you as a character or your perspective. At that point, like, I kind of evaluated myself and I was like, all right, so this girl has actually been through a lot, so it's not like she's whining over nothing. Like, she has a reason to complain. She lives in a society that is trying to oppress her, and all she wants is freedom, but nobody else wants that for her. And so I feel like the fact I've got like makeup remover in one of my eyes, but I feel like the fact that she was not even necessarily complaining, but was maybe reflecting on some of the like struggles that she had that was ongoing, like, it's valid. Like, she is definitely somebody who has been through a lot of stuff and she actually has a right to complain. But I feel like it's the writing style in this one. It almost felt like the character was more looking out and talking about what was happening as opposed to like looking in and really spending time establishing her feelings to the reader. I felt like she was a vehicle through which we viewed the story as opposed to being like a 3D fleshed out character, like somebody who I felt was a person. I think that that is the main kind of issue that I had with this one, because there were moments in here of torture. Like I said, she has been through a lot, she goes through a lot in this book, but instead of thinking like, oh no, I hate that this is happening to this character that I've been reading for hundreds of pages, I was more like, oh, like this is interesting, like I'm enjoying this scene, like I'm interested in this scene. And I think my lack of emotional attachment to her led to a ambivalence towards the plot, and the only character I had that I was actually interested in was the character that was introduced more towards the second half of the book that I ended up really enjoying. So there is like a big twist in this book as well, I guess, which didn't really hit for me because I wasn't feeling attached to any of the characters apart from that specific one, which is a shame because it is quite a dynamic ending. And so I am very sad to say that in terms of whether I'm going to shelve or whether I'm going to be scrapping this book, it is going to be a scrap from me. In terms of Magical Readathon, because as you know I am participating in that, I haven't double checked and I don't really want to because I have limited data, but I'm pretty sure that I have this book in for animal studies, and the prompt for that is to read a book that features a dragon. There's a dragon on the front of this, and I'm pretty sure that that is the prompt that I use this for. Like, I'm sure that it is. Oh my god, all of my toothpaste just fell on the floor. So as for what I'm reading next, I was supposed to be picking up another Chinese fantasy because I'm in China. I mean, that's why I added so many Chinese fantasies to my TBR, but because I actually didn't enjoy The Night Ends in Fire, I kind of just want a little bit of a break from it. So I have started another book because I finished The Night Ends with Fire on the way to Cheyenne, which is where I am now. It was like a 6-hour train journey, and so I'm already 15% of the way into Wicked Beginnings by L.A. Cotton, which is a really easy romance that I have on my TBR for this month. It is the kind of thing that I would have eaten up when I was like 16, 17, 18. I think it's a new adult romance. It's one that I picked up free at Rare, and it is a stepbrother romance, so it has like a little element of the taboo. It is nothing difficult, nothing challenging. I'm not expecting it to be too deep. It's also pretty short, 350 pages, so my kind of plan with this one is to finish it before I leave Cheyenne, Japan and start one of the Chinese fantasies on my TBR on the way back home, because it's like a 17-hour journey, I think. I think it's about 24 hours including my train home when I'm in England, because right now we've done like an update in every city, which is pretty cool, but I also like, I kind of need to read just a little bit faster. Not that I'm going to push myself, because my priority right now obviously is to enjoy my trip, but instead of scrolling through Instagram at like nighttime, I could either be sleeping or reading a little bit more, if I'm being honest. So for Magical Readathon, I think this one covers spells and incantations, and the prompt for that was to read a book that had a word in the title that was the same as a word in the title of the last book I was reading, but it was the book that I was reading at the time that I watched the announcement video, not the last book I actually read. And that was To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X Chang for the last episode, I think, of Shelve It or Scrap It. And so I'm reading Wicked Beginnings because it was the only book I had in the stacks that fit the prompt. So I'm already 15% of the way in, so I'll give you guys a little bit of an update, around 33%. But from what I know about this, it is about a girl who moves from England to the US with her father. Her mother and her brother have died. They're starting a new life, but while their house is being done up or built or whatever's going on, they are staying with her uncle and his wife and their children. So I don't know how many children they have together. They have at least one together, but her uncle's wife has 2 kids from a previous marriage, one of which is a guy that the main character hooked up with a year before when she was visiting for the summer, and she didn't know that he was like technically her step cousin or whatever. I say it was a step brother romance, it's a step cousin romance. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be angsty, easy, probably not the best romance I've ever read, but definitely something that I could do with right now as a palette cleanser before I probably dive into another Chinese fantasy. So I am just past the 30% mark in Wicked Beginnings by L.A. Cotton, and I do think I'm going to be calling this one here and DNFing. I was torn because it is such an easy read and it truly is not taxing for me to get through this, but it also is not giving me anything. I do still feel like if I'd have read this when I was 16, 17, 18, I would have eaten it up. But my main issue right now is that while I'm okay with the teenage angst and the drama, and like I knew what I signed up for with this book, I don't feel any chemistry between our main character and the supposed love interest. The main character's mother and her brother have passed away in an accident that she was also a part of, and her father moves them to their brother's house in California while their new house is being done up. Like, they're from England, they've moved all the way to the United States, and while their house is being fixed up, they are going to be staying in the pool house of her uncle's house. There she meets her cousins who she has met and hung out with before, but also her uncle's current wife's kids, one of which is the guy that she hooked up with like a year ago. And honestly, there's nothing more to tell you than that. That is pretty much it. There is this like whole vibe surrounding these kids that like runs through the school. It's called the Stone Prince effect because they're the stones and the princes. The family was married together and these kids like rule the school. I find the level of drama surrounding it to be a little bit unbelievable, because it's like, oh, watch out for Maverick, who's the guy like who I think is going to be the love interest. Well, he's the guy who she hooked up with last summer. Like I said, there's no chemistry, which is why I struggle to call him the love interest, but everyone's like so cautious and like tiptoes around him when he rolls the school, and I don't know why. Like, what is it about this kid apart from the fact that he's attractive, he's rich, he's I guess a little bit intimidating, but why are we constantly talking about him as though he's some sort of celebrity? Like, I'm just not getting it, and the way that everybody kind of talks about it is getting to me a little bit, because I'm like, okay, but do we have anything to these characters? These are just random kids at the school that like the main character's making friends with. I'm like, is there anything to these characters other than the information that they're passing along about this super intimidating guy at school? Right now, I think not. So I am going to be DNFing that one, sadly, and it is also one that was on my self-destructing books for this year, so it's good obviously that I've read that one, and it's going to be self-destructing. I'll link my self-destructing books if you haven't seen that video yet, because I only posted it like a month ago, so that list is super fresh and I'm excited to be making progress on it already, because it normally takes me a long time. In terms of the magical readathon, I have been participating in the magical readathon as long as it's existed, and I have a bunch of guild points, which means that I can buy scrolls to count books that I've DNF'd or like swap books around. Like, there's a whole ton of perks you can buy with guild points, one of which is to count a book that you've DNF'd towards the prompt to actually fulfill it, which is what I'm going to be doing in this instance. And the next one I'm moving on to, I was undecided, but I do think that there is a book on my TBR that makes the most sense to read right now. And that one is, whoa, sorry, my Kindle was on charge and I've just like ripped it out of the wall. It is fully charged now though, so I can take it off anyway. And that one is of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. So this one, in terms of magical readathon, is in for conjuration, and the prompt for that is to read a book by an author that is from a country that you have randomly generated. So I did all of that stuff in my TBR, which you can go ahead and check out if you would like. But the country that I was going with is Singapore, and Amber Chen is a Singaporean Chinese author. Honestly, I can't tell you anything about this book right now. I picked it mainly to fulfill a prompt. I have 3 Chinese fantasies. Well, I've got 4 Chinese fantasies on my TBR. One is a cozy fantasy though. And I think of the other 3, 2 of them were a Mulan retelling. And I think that this one is the second. The first one was The Night Ends in Fire. But that is all I can tell you right now. So the reason why I've picked this one is because it would be a lot more difficult for me to swap it out when I get home. Right now, I haven't decided whether I'm going to continue with the same TBR with all of the Chinese fantasy that I put in for this trip. Because I do think of Jade and Dragons as the last one I'm going to get to before I return home. But I do know that the other 2 prompts for the other 2 Chinese fantasies are a lot easier for me to switch out books if I want to. Whereas this one would be a lot more difficult for me to find something that fits the prompt. So it makes sense for me to read this one right now when it's the most applicable. Today, I am once again going to be performing the art of repacking my entire suitcase while I talk to you about my book. This one is, of course, of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. And I'm only really updating you guys on the plot because the last time we spoke, I had absolutely no idea what it was. But it actually came back to me really quickly when I started this one. It is a Mulan retelling, but it is a little bit different than The Night Ends with Fire because I feel like that one stuck more to the Mulan story than this one did, because in The Night Ends with Fire, we're following a girl who dresses up as a boy to go to war. And in this one, we are following a girl who dresses up as a boy to join an engineers guild to find out who killed her father. So she is the first daughter of a influential clan. I think she's from an island, so like her family are important there, but in terms of the wider world, like she's never really been into the city. And her father is murdered, and she just really cannot figure out why anybody would want to hurt him because he's just an engineer. He is a particularly talented engineer, but she can't figure out a reason why somebody would ever want to murder him. And she finds a suspicious note on his person that her brother is kind of like refusing to investigate. So she dresses up as a boy and she runs away from home. She's originally trying to... Did like 50,000 people just move past the door to my hotel room? But she is originally just going to travel to the Engineers Guild to see if she can find some information about her father, or if anyone there like who knew him when he was part of this Engineers Guild has any information on what could have possibly happened to him. But she ends up joining the Engineers Guild as an apprentice, which is great for her because as a daughter, she has certain responsibilities that her family expect her and her society expect her to uphold. And the main one really is marrying into a family to secure better connections for her family. However, she is actually quite a skilled engineer herself, and she really wants to follow in her father's footsteps, but her gender is like preventing her from doing this. So when she does get the opportunity to actually join the guild, she decides to jump upon that. And while she is there learning, she will also unravel the mystery of kind of what happened to her father. So I'm only like 24% of the way through it right now, and I'm having a good time. I really hope with this one that I can stay attentive so that I enjoy it, because the writing style is good. Like, I'm enjoying the telling of the story. The character I'm not super attached to right now, but something that I feel like I didn't realize this would go into is actually the school itself. So where I'm up to right now, she's kind of attending her first lesson at this school, and I didn't know it was gonna have that kind of like school vibe. Something that I also didn't expect from this, which I feel like I'm kind of getting used to now, but I found a little bit jarring. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think that we're following like an engineer, but I don't think I realized that this would be like steampunky. We have airships in here. When we first meet our main character, she's built herself like a set of mechanical wings that she's attempting to fly with. And I mean, I went into this not really expecting very much. I couldn't even remember the plot, but that's just like not something super common in the fantasy that I read. So it is making it a little bit more interesting, but just for the first couple of chapters when I wasn't expecting it, it was a little bit jarring. But yeah, so far so good with this one. I feel like if it carries on in this vein, and like I said, I can manage to stay invested and like focused, then we may have a good result for this one. The reason why I'm so worried about my attention span is because I am still traveling. The next time you see me though, I will be home. I'm about to start my journey back home. My flight is in just under 12 hours, and I think from now it is about 36 hours until I get home. So I have a 24-hour journey home like once I'm on my first flight, and I obviously plan on pretty much just reading and watching C-dramas the entire way home, but I am of course going to be tired, but fingers crossed I end up enjoying this one. So I am home from China now, as you can probably tell, and I had a great time. Thank you for asking. I think my vlog has probably already gone up if you want to see what else I got up to, apart from reading 2.5 books. That one was actually a Trover trip, but it wasn't one that I hosted. It was Gavin from Gavin Reads It All's Trover trip, and honestly one of my favorites. It is tied for my second favorite. That was the 5th one I think that I've done, either hosting or going as a traveler, and it's tied for my second favorite along with Croatia. But Croatia and China are very different places, so I can't decide which one comes out on top. But my absolute favorite was Thailand, which was the one that I hosted last February. But if you guys are interested in traveling, if you're interested in Trover trips, if you want to go places but you don't have anyone to travel with, I think at the time that I'm posting this video there is like 1 or 2 weeks left to secure a spot on my Zanzibar trip for this July. If you guys want a little island retreat full of sand, sea, relaxation, a couple of exciting activities on there like a quad bike excursion and a monkey walk through the jungle, I am very excited. It's going to be a good mix of like chill and action, which is not the type of trip I normally go on, so I'm very excited for that little change of pace. But in terms of traveling and also reading, on the way back I think it was a 30-hour journey from the time that we left to go to the airport until I reached home. I finished Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. Unfortunately I was not able to bring you that 60 to 70% update because I was somewhere. I was on a plane or in an airport or on a train or in a train station on my way back home, but I did finish this one along the way, and I'm sad to say that I didn't love it. I enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed it more than I Ends with Fire, but I don't feel strongly enough about it to want to continue on with this series or to keep it on my shelves. So I think it did suffer slightly from the fact that I was traveling. Not that I wasn't paying attention to it, it was definitely holding my interest a lot more than The Night Ends with Fire did, but because of the time I read it, like sleep deprived, on the move, distracted, I actually can't remember a great deal about the second half of this book to talk to you guys about now. I think the place where this lost me is that I felt like the Engineers Guild could have been so much more interesting and exciting than it was. Like, we all love an academy setting, a training montage, a series of trials, and I feel like when you're introducing that into a story you have to really lean into it because it's a trope that people love that is often done very, very well. And something that was particularly interesting about this as well is because it was an Engineers Guild, where typically it's more like a martial academy or a magic school. So I think that Amber Chen could definitely have done more with this setting and more with this structure and really lent into it and made it super interesting. And that element of the story just wasn't particularly strong for me, which is sad because it is typically a setting that I really enjoy and a plot structure that I really, really enjoy. I did like the characters a little bit more in this. I wasn't particularly interested in the romance we were developing either. either. But I did also really like the world of this. Like I said, going into it, I wasn't expecting the steampunk nature of it, which I mean, maybe I should have done with it being mainly surrounding engineers. But the more we got into it, the more I found it interesting because it is a little bit different from the fantasy settings that I typically read. And in terms of the way that the plot was going and the plot developed, especially towards the end, that little unexpected element for me did continue to hold my interest a little bit more. So I did enjoy this one. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think that it was a very solid kind of middle of the road book. I just don't think that there was necessarily a little spark of anything that was strong enough to compel me to pick up a further book in this series. Whereas even though I think that this is the stronger book over The Night Ends with Fire, we do have the second love interest that I was talking about that was introduced in here, which actually, if it wasn't for the fact that I have so many other books to read and I wasn't that invested in this, so it's not worth me pursuing this series, that one character is low-key enough to make me at least think about continuing that. Whereas I feel like this doesn't really have anything necessarily compelling enough to drive me into a sequel. As a little mini wrap-up of the China portion of this episode, of the 6 books that I originally had on my TBR, I attempted to read 3 and I'm going to be scrapping all of them, and I am very, very sad. It was much easier for me to make a decision of scrapping these when I was reading the ebook version and I didn't have any access to the physicals because I am obsessed with this. Why is it always the Illumicrate books with the most stunning printed hardbacks that are a flop for me? Not that this was like a complete flop, but I am obviously going to be unhauling it. And the same happened with Mistress of Lies, which was my favorite printed hardback I'd literally ever seen. And then don't even talk to me about this because I was obsessed with this when I unboxed it because I love the cover, I love the color palette, I love the edge. But then I opened it and I saw the character art on the end pages and I saw that one character, which is the reason why I would maybe consider continuing on with this series. And I almost changed my mind. I was like, how can I redact everything I've said about this book or like edit it in a way that actually made it seem like I liked it enough to keep this copy and continue on. I mean, this as well has just reinforced my opinion that this character is worth continuing this series for. But I think overall I did end up giving it 2 stars because it was a fine book. You know, it was not terrible at all, but I also didn't enjoy any element of it enough. Aside from that one character, like everything else, the atmosphere, the writing, the plot was just fine. Like it was good, but it wasn't really good, you know? So this one's a 2, which I feel bad because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but also I didn't like it. This one's a 3 because I did enjoy it. I think it's solid. I'm just not interested enough to pursue it any further. So these 2 are completed scraps. This one, is this one signed and personalized to me? I don't think it is, thankfully. Yeah, no, I just picked it up at the free table at Rare, so I have no reason to be sad about unhauling this one. And that means that we are halfway through the TBR that we'd already established right at the beginning. So we do have 3 books left. As I mentioned, I'm not sure right now whether I'm going to be swapping any of these out. And at this particular minute, I am not going to be picking a new book to read because I'm working on the last episode of the Romantasy Rundown right now. I do think I am going to pause on my decision of whether I am substituting any of these though, because in a few days I am going to be going on that trip to London I talked about at the beginning of this video, and I still have all of the ebooks on my Kindle for these 3, so I feel like it just makes sense to keep these here for now until I get back from that trip, and then we'll see where we're at. Hello my guys, I am almost ready to head to London. I'm just packing my final bits, but before I got on the train, I wanted to let you guys know that I think that the next book that I'm going to be picking up is Song Like Silver, Flame Like Night by Amelie Wen Zhao. The reason why I've decided to go with this one is actually because it's the one that I want to swap out the most. It's one of my self-destructing books, so I'm not keen on picking it up. I'm kind of avoiding it. The reason why it's a self-destructing book is because I read Blood Air by Amelie Wen Zhao and I did not enjoy it, so this is not one that I've been highly anticipating at all. But the reason why I'm starting with this one instead of the other 2, which are a little bit more preferable to me right now, is because this is the one that would be hardest to swap out. I did have a look around my shelves. The only one that I could find that would be a pretty easy swap for this was another well, this is an adult fantasy, I think, but like it was a YA fantasy first book in a series, which is a little bit too similar in theme. Like if I was going to swap this one out, then I'd want to do it for something like a thriller or like a standalone literary, just like something a little bit different. I feel like I've read quite a lot of fantasy recently, which is perfectly normal for me, but I wanted just something a little bit quicker to break up the pace that also wasn't romance. But never mind, it's good that I'm getting to this one anyway, with it being a self-destructing book. It's one that I kind of need to read at some point and decide whether I want to DNF it or whether I actually want to continue and see if Emily Wenjou is an author that I can enjoy. But in terms of magical readathon, this one is the book that I need for law, and the prompt is to read a book with a musical term in the title, and obviously this has song in the title, which is what I meant when I said it's like difficult to swap out. It's for the magical readathon prompts. So I'm gonna start that one on the train. I haven't read anything for a couple of days because I've been pretty busy and I'm feeling a little bit behind, so hopefully I'll make some decent progress. And you know what, if I get 100 pages in and I'm not enjoying it, I'm absolutely fine to DNF this one and buy myself another scroll for magical readathon and move on to a couple of my other choices. I also have book club reads that I need to get a move on with as well. I'm so behind on reading, guys, and it's like fine, but I'm definitely overestimating my ability to get those pages in at this point. So traveling, while it's going to take me away from home for a couple of days, actually works out really well for me a lot of the time because I don't have anything to do but kind of lock in and get things read. Good morning, friends. I am in London, although I admit barely. We're actually heading home today. I did not read very much on the train over here, which is why I haven't given you guys an update, and I haven't read very much while I've been here either. I think I mainly slept, especially on the second train here, which is why not very many pages were read. But I also threw a spanner in the works actually, because when I got on my first train, I realized that I actually did not have Song Like Silver Flame Like Night downloaded onto my Kindle because I had borrowed it from Libby to take with me to China, and then when I came home I renewed the loan, but I didn't realize that I then had to re-download it onto my Kindle after that, so I had to wait until I got here to be able to do that. So I started a different book, which was The Teller of Small Fortunes by, I think, is it Julie Leong, which is also on my TBR. It is also in there for magical readathon. It is one of the ones that I could have, actually the only one that I could have really easily swapped out, but I wanted to, if I was committing to reading all of the Chinese fantasy that I put on my TBR, I wanted to space them out a little bit instead of picking up the Katie Robert book right now. So in terms of magical readathon, this one fulfills the prompt for demonology, which is banishing basics, read a book with a missing person, and this one pretty much fulfills that exactly. It is marketed as a cozy fantasy, and I kind of understand why, although I don't know how high stakes the plot is at this moment, so I can't tell you whether it does like fully lean into the cozy vibe or whether it's kind of, once again, I've just done a whole project on the term romantasy and whether it actually means anything or whether it's just being put on books to sell them, and I feel like a very similar thing is happening to a lesser degree with cozy as well. But we are following a woman who is a fortune teller, and she only tells small fortunes. So she'll tell you like, tomorrow you might find a coin on the ground, or like in a week you might buy your baby an apple and things like that, just like little glimpses of the future. And the reason why she does this is because she doesn't want the responsibility of what happens to people's lives when she tells them like, oh, you're gonna die in 2 years of an illness, you know, which I feel like is pretty valid. And very early on in the books, I'm only 25% of the way through, which actually is not a very long book, so that's only like 75-80 pages in, and in the first couple of chapters she comes across these two, they're not mercenaries, one of them is a veteran and one is a thief, but she gets very much like shady energy from them because they're like big scary men and she's a woman traveling by herself. And she reads their fortunes and she does tell one of them that he is going to give his daughter a kitten, which puts him in a bad mood, and she's like, well, what did I say that was wrong? I don't understand. And the reason why these two men are on the road together is because this man's daughter has been kidnapped and he is looking for her. So she kind of goes with them to figure out what happened to his daughter, to see if they can find her. And the way that they travel essentially is in her wagon, but they're still traveling from town to town. They're staying there for a couple of days. The men go to gather information while she tells fortunes for a couple of days. And it goes very much like the format and the structure of the book is through the fortunes that she tells. So in every town it'll tell you of like one person in particular and like the fortune that she gives them. And I actually feel like part of this, there's a lot of racism in this book actually, because the main character is from somewhere called Shannara, and she is in a more western area traveling around. She's left her home for reasons that I feel like we're going to get into a little bit later in the book, but she is faced with like a lot of different people respond to her in different ways because of this. They're all taken aback by the fact that she is from a different place, but the degrees to which they respond to that, either positively or negatively, are different depending on the locations that she's traveling around. So that does play into the book a great deal. Sorry, I'm using the viewfinder to see how my hair's looking. I need to straighten it out a bit. But it also goes into the fortune that she tells, and while she regards them to be small fortunes in a lot of instances, these are not without consequence. They are not without impact on people's lives. And because she doesn't know the full context of things that she's saying sometimes, like when she said to one of our main characters that I see you giving your daughter a kitten, which obviously had an impact on him because his daughter was missing, even though she didn't know that. You can't really tell small fortunes, I feel like, is going to be kind of part of this story because you don't know, I guess, what is big or small or what impact and significance these things have on people's lives. I think it was a good choice for the trip because it's kind of like easy to read. It's nothing too complicated or too intense at this moment, and I'm having a good time with it so far. I can't tell what my verdict's going to be overall. I feel like it depends on how much the book impacts me as a whole, but right now I'm definitely enjoying it. I am 60% of the way through The Teller of Small Fortunes now, which translates to page 192. I'm up to the start of chapter 12, and it is reminding me a lot of Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher at this point, which is a fairy tale-esque story about a young woman who is on a quest to save her sister from her horrible abusive husband, who is a prince. This is similar in structure in that we are following our main character on a quest, and as the quest continues they encounter kind of more and more problems that puts obstacles in their path, and also they're gathering more people with every town that they visit. So our main character, in this case our fortune teller Tao, is aiding the thief and the mercenary with finding the mercenary's lost daughter. He's called Mash, and every town they go to she's telling fortunes, they're gathering information, but also it's very clear from the beginning that Tao is running away from her past, and she's very elusive about it. She doesn't talk about it, which I mean is fair, but it's very clear that she can't outrun it, and little bits of her past are catching up with her as we continue along this path. And it's definitely a story that is more about like the found friendship, the friends that we make along the way, and these situations that they end up in. It is something that deals with a lot of deeper topics than it seems to on the surface, in a little bit of like a thought-provoking or a wholesome way, and I am having a good time with it, but I'm also having kind of the same issues with it that I had with Nettle and Bone, in that I enjoyed it in the moment. Like, I found it to be charming. I'm finding this to be quite charming, even more so actually, because I feel like while this does, like I said, deal with some deeper topics, it is a little bit lighter than Nettle and Bone is, which deals with some really quite dark topics. So I'm finding it to be quite charming and fun, and it is enjoyable to read, but I'm not finding it to be especially impactful. It is playing with my emotions slightly, but I feel like because it is quite a short book, I'm not as attached to the characters as I would be if it was like a longer book, a more detailed book, and because of that I'm not as emotionally impacted as I would be as well. And that is just like me and my preference in stories. I love the atmosphere and I love the themes. I especially love themes of friendship and found family, so it's kind of hitting all of those points, but I just don't feel like it's going to be a story that I think about a great deal. And I was thinking, like, is it because it's a standalone? And I don't think it is, because there are standalones that have been really impactful to me that I think about regularly. And something that I actually do really appreciate about this at this point is the wider world that this is set in, because the world definitely extends past the bounds of this story. This is quite a small story in a large world, which I really enjoy. I like the feeling that the world is fully fleshed out and hasn't just been created around the parameters of this plot, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like the author, like if I ask the author a question about this world that is only hinted at in this story, she could give me like a fully fleshed out answer about this, like whatever it may be, as opposed to the world only being created for the purpose of serving the characters. And that adds like a level of credibility and believability for me, which is essential for me in my enjoyment of a fantasy story. I much prefer worlds that have been created first and then the story put in them, as opposed to created just to serve the story. And I feel like it's particularly impressive in this regard because the story is, like I said, quite a small one that the author didn't need to do the level of world building and put the amount of effort in that they obviously did to make this feel credible for the size of the story that they were telling. But I definitely appreciate that that was done. I made a little bit of a boo-boo yesterday. I had the spoiler card for the Teller of Small Fortunes in the book, and I also have a bookmark in, so I thought, like, I looked where the spoiler card was and not the bookmark, and I thought I only had 60 to 70 pages left, and I actually had like 130, which wasn't ideal because at that point I was kind of excited for the book to be over, and then to find out that I had another like 60 pages that I did not know I had wasn't great. I wasn't happy about it, but I have finished the Teller of Small Fortunes now, and I did enjoy the second half a little bit more than I did the first. I don't want to say that the plot picked up. There was a resolution of some of the threads that we had running through this. So obviously we're looking for a missing child, and that plotline ends up resolved, but there's also a lot of personal plot lines with Tao and her family and her past which come to a head and resolve throughout this book as well, because as far as I'm aware it is a standalone, but I do definitely see potential for spin-offs from this story in the future. I actually would not be mad to get a book or a series set within the Mages Guild in here, because like I said, my favorite thing about this is how well thought out the world is and how expansive it seems, and we have all these little offshoots in different directions which could definitely be explored, but the most interesting thing to me, obviously because it's a magic school kind of setting, was the Mages Guild, and I kind of wish we got a little bit more of it, although I definitely understand why we didn't, because that is not the focus of this story. In fact, it is almost the exact opposite of the focus of this story. But overall I did like this one. I enjoyed the writing, the atmosphere, and like I said, the world. I just wasn't underwhelmed by the plot, because I went into this knowing that it had been branded as cozy, which generally means that the plot is not the most epic, expansive thing that you're going to read. So I knew what I was signing up for, but I also went into it knowing that it is rare that cozy stories blow me away. Like, I enjoy them. I enjoyed this, but it didn't really do anything for me. It hasn't left a lasting impression on me. And while there were lots of things I liked, especially about that second half, I unfortunately would be very, very surprised if I caught myself really thinking about this again in the future, or if I ever had a desire to pick it up and reread it. Maybe if there was another book or series set in this world that I read and really enjoyed, I would potentially maybe want to come back and revisit this, but that is obviously like a hypothetical that may never happen. So very sadly I am going to be scrapping this one. So we are four books scrapped so far for this episode, and I'm really sad because the amount of stunning editions I'm unhauling is starting to hurt me a little bit. But once again, this did fulfill the prompt for demonology, which was to read a book that had a missing person, and this is also going to check off one of my R Fantasy bingo prompts, which is to read a book featuring characters or main characters that are parents, which I've been looking at my R Fantasy bingo because I'm gearing up to make the TBR video, and I've been thinking about what book I'm going to use to fulfill that prompt while I've been reading this one that literally has a main character that is a parent. So my brain cells aren't quite working right now, clearly, but that is good because the next book that I'm going to be picking up is probably one of the easiest reads that I'm going to have this month, and that one is Neon Gods by Katie Robert. So this is another magical readathon prompt that I need for my calling. This one is for elemental studies and it's to read a book with a fruit on the cover, which as you can see, this has pomegranates. I love the new covers for this series. I don't know if they're a good representation of the contents of the book because I associate Katie Robert specifically as being like an erotica author, which her books do have some degree of plot, but they are like really heavy on the smut. And I don't know if this cover and the covers for the rest of this series scream like really smutty romance to me, but I do definitely like them. I think they're very, very nice to look at. This one is actually a spin-off from a Katie Roberts series that I've already read, which was the Wicked Villain series. That one was a series of almost Disney retellings. They're in a contemporary setting and we're following like the villain and the heroine of like classic Disney movies. The first one is like Jafar and Jasmine. Once again, very, very smutty romance. And that one takes place in Carver City. This series takes place in the ultra modern city of Olympus, and all of the books are based on Greek gods. So they do kind of intersect, where we have like Hercules as a Disney film, but also intersects with like Greek gods. And that is how the two series are kind of connected. And then of course they're like neighboring cities. So I'm expecting a little bit of character crossover in here as well. But the first thing I immediately notice about this series is that it is significantly thicker than the Wicked Villain series. And in terms of contents, this one in particular is a Hades and Persephone retelling, which as far as Greek myth goes, especially converted to romance, it is of course my favorite. I just read a little bit too much of the Wicked Villain series all at once and got burnt out on it because it's not like extremely smutty romance is not my norm. I like it from time to time, but I have to take big breaks in between. So I'm interested to see how this plays out, like whether I've currently taken enough of a break from Katie Robert to appreciate it, or whether I'm not quite in the mood, because I don't know right now. Like I can't determine. Like I'm not desperate to read it, but I'm also quite looking forward to it. So we'll see what I think. Guys, apologies for the low lighting. I'm having a very, very chill couch day. Pretty much just alternating between playing the Oblivion remaster and reading my book. But I am halfway through Neon Gods now. I'm a little bit past the halfway point. I'm on page 234 out of 420, and it's definitely an easy read, which I mean, it's pretty much contemporary romance. I am intrigued though, actually, because I think there's like a slight fantastical element in this one where if you cross the river Styx, like it just kind of feels weird. If that makes sense. It doesn't make sense, which is why I'm slightly confused. But then also I'm pretty sure Persephone said that Hades has tattoos that move as well. But aside from that, it's pretty much a contemporary romance set in the city of Olympus, where the 13 rule. Now, the gods are all titles, so like Zeus is a title as opposed to his name. The same is true for Demeter, Hades, Hermes, and all of the other 13 most important gods. The book starts out with Persephone being blindsided by her mother and Zeus when she discovers that they are springing a proposal on her, and they're at a party and Zeus just proposes in front of all of like the elite of Olympus, and Persephone kind of has to agree. However, Zeus is cruel. The last few heroes have died, and she also like just isn't interested in him at all. So she flees and she's herded by his henchmen towards the river Styx, where she crosses the bridge towards the lower city, which Hades rules, and ends up being taken in by Hades. Now, while there are 13 gods or 13 titles that rule the city, the title of Hades is supposed to be a myth because nobody thinks he actually exists anymore because his line was wiped out. However, Persephone discovers that Hades does exist, but the people of Olympus treat him as a myth. I don't understand how he exists. The 13 knows he exists, and he rules the entire lower city, but nobody knows that he's there. But like all of the people of the lower city know that he's there. All of the gods know that he's there. It's a weird dynamic, but essentially Hades existing is kept on the down low so that Zeus can maintain his power. She ends up striking a bargain with Hades that he is going to claim her publicly as his for the next 3 months for Hades to get back at Zeus, because Zeus also killed his family, and so that Persephone can hopefully go back and Zeus won't want her anymore because she's like sullied and imperfect. So it is a romance from there. Something that I'm really enjoying about it actually is the sexual tension between Hades and Persephone. I really like Hades in this, and I like that he is somebody who likes to always maintain control. He's cool, calm, and collected, and Persephone is really testing that about him. Katie Robert does predominantly write like BDSM romances, and we definitely have a big, like a strong presence of like a sub-dom dynamic in here, with Persephone playing a little bit of a brat role. I don't know how well the representation of BDSM is throughout Katie Robert's novels, but I know that all of the Wicked Villains series portrays BDSM relationships. Something that I don't love about this one, that I am also noticing is a recurring theme throughout Katie Roberts' books, especially the ones like this one, Sabine Valley, and the Wicked Villains are all kind of tied together, is the inclusion of sex clubs. And it's not that I'm against sex clubs specifically, it's that I don't care. Like, it's not a favorite trope of mine, a favorite setting, a favorite dynamic in a romantic or an erotic novel. And the fact that the sex club or a sex club and like public sex plays such a strong role in this book, as it has in all of the Wicked Villains books, I'm not loving, just because I've read all of the Wicked Villains clubs, which centers around a different Hades in Carver City who owns a sex club, which is why it's so present throughout that one, because it's like a neutral space in the middle of Carver City. Whereas this is more about Hades showing his dominance over Zeus and claiming Persephone in front of the rest of not Carver City, Olympus. So, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say apart from that. Katie Robert, in terms of being an author that writes a lot of smut, I think her smut is decent. I do enjoy it. But if you didn't catch the Romantasy Rundown, which is a series I did recently, I discovered that in terms of spice rating, I prefer my books, like my sweet spot is a 2 to 3 chili pepper rating, whereas I would say that this one is very firmly like a 4.5 at the lowest. It could also be a full, no, it is a full 5. It deals heavily with kinks, and the explicit content is present from probably a quarter to a third of the way through the book, and I'm assuming it goes continuously all the way through. So it's more spicy than I like to read regularly, but in terms of the story and the characters, I think it's a little bit more developed than the Wicked Villain series is, and I am enjoying it a little bit more, but I just feel like it is a little bit samey. Like, if you've read one Katie Robert book, you've pretty much read them all. It has a lot of the same elements, and some of the character dynamics are the same. Like Hermes in here reminds me a lot of Tink in the Wicked Villain series. I don't feel like I'm getting anything super new and exciting, and while I do enjoy Katie Robert, I don't, because you could say like Sarah J Maas writes the same kind of thing over and over again, the same kind of dynamic over and over again. That would be a valid criticism or observation, I guess. The difference in that for me is that I really like that dynamic that Sarah J Maas writes over and over again. Ali Hazelwood as well. I really like that dynamic. Whereas with Katie Robert, like, I don't enjoy it enough to want to read it over and over and over again. I finished Neon Gods, and last night when I was going to bed, I had about 30% of this book left, and I was kind of just ready for it to be done at that point. I was ready to move on. And so I put the audiobook on while I was getting ready for bed and like brushing my teeth and stuff, and 10 out of 10 would not recommend. The accents that they use are an interesting choice, but then the narrator for Persephone, like, she's fine, but the one for Hades is like borderline unbearable, and especially when you're hearing Persephone's dialogue in his chapters. It was interesting. I actually would recommend that you go ahead and listen to a sample just to see what I mean. I'm not a big fan of listening to smut in general, because it kind of gives me the ick when I'm listening to it as opposed to reading it with my eyes, but the narrator made it 10 times worse, so definitely do not go the audio route on this one. I will say though, it does have a dual narration at least, which is my preference when we have dual perspective novels. So yeah, I finished this one. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars, which I feel like is a running theme with this episode right now. I'm actually desperate to get a shelf. Like, the scraps are great for the project, but my soul needs a shelf right now, because I am going to be scrapping this one as well. I do think that Katie Robert does write very good smutty BDSM erotic romance. So if that is your bag and you have not tried Katie Robert yet, I would definitely recommend giving her a go. However, it's not really my bag. Like, it is okay from time to time. As I said in the last clip, like, it does get a little bit repetitive for me because it's not something that I actively seek out. I don't want to keep reading very similar books over and over again in this particular genre. I do think that her writing is really good though, and I do think that her smut scenes are very well written. Like, I like them. It's just I guess the frequency of them for me, while like, it's not a criticism of the book because I knew what I was getting into when I picked this one up, it's just not my particular preference. Like I said, I prefer the 2 to 3 chili pepper rating as opposed to like 5 or 6 very graphic sex scenes. And it's not the graphic nature of them that's the issue. It's the frequency throughout the book that I'm just not that into. But the plot in this one was pretty decent and I felt like it balanced the smut out pretty well. I would be intrigued to continue this series based on the plot. I don't think I'm going to, if I'm being honest, but I do think that the plot was interesting, and I think that this is much better than the Wicked Villain series. So if you have just read that and you wanted kind of more, like you thought it was okay but you saw potential for you to really enjoy Katie Robert, I would definitely recommend picking up this book. And also, like I said, if you're into like the BDSM, very smutty erotic romance and you haven't tried Katie Robert yet, then I do think, like I said, it's not my particular genre, so maybe there is much better out there. But from my limited experience with this specific niche, which actually, to be fair, of this specific niche, like BDSM erotic romance, my only experience is Katie Robert, but I do think that she does a good job. So sadly, this one is going to be a scrap, but it does fulfill one of those valuable magical readathon prompts. So I have now completed Elemental Studies, which was to read a book with a fruit on the cover, and actually I keep meaning to clarify something and forgetting. The first book that I read for this episode and for Magical Readathon was The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song, and I'm pretty sure I said that this one was for animal studies because I didn't check the prompt list before I very confidently told you it was for animal studies, which was to read a book that featured a dragon. This one was actually for shapeshifting, the prompt being a book that features a dragon, but I just keep meaning to correct myself and forgetting. So while I have these here ready to film my wrap up, I thought that I would let you guys know that. So we are now moving on to the last book that was preordained for this episode, the one that I have been putting off, which is Song of Silver, Flame Like Night by Amelie Wenzhou. I think I keep calling it Song Like Silver, Flame Like Night. There's just a lot of words in this title and I can't seem to get them in the right order. In terms of Magical Readathon, this one fulfills Law, which is a book with a musical term in the title. So this one has song. I did think about swapping this one out. I couldn't find something really suitable that I wanted to read any more than I wanted to read this one. So we're just going to roll with it. And then after this, I get to read 4 books of my own choosing, but kind of like within the parameters of Magical Readathon. I haven't necessarily been feeling slumpy throughout this episode, but I am kind of eager for this portion of it to be over because I've mentioned before that my favorite part of Shelve It or Scrap It is the spontaneity, not really knowing what I'm going to read. And I do think that my enthusiasm to read throughout this episode has suffered because I've already known all of the books that I'm going to be picking up. Honestly, considering I've now read 5 books and only DNF'd 1, if I'm not vibing with this one, I do feel like I'm due a DNF. So that is always an option. But this one is inspired by the legends of Beijing, I believe, and it is following a girl whose mother has died. This book heavily focuses on colonialism, I think. And when her mother died, she carved or like painted a symbol, like a character, onto the main character's arm that burned into her skin and left a scar. And the main character has been trying to figure out what this means, like what the symbol represents and why her mother placed it there and how it has stayed with her and burned and scarred and that kind of vibe. There is magic in this world, but I think that it has died out, and so I'm assuming that she's going to realize that she is one of these like long lost magic wielders and kind of like fight to reclaim her country. So the reason why I don't want to read this is because I read Blood Air by Amelie Wenzhou, which I was very, very excited about because it was an Anastasia retelling, and I love the movie Anastasia, which I know has taken a lot of creative liberties with the real historical account of like Anastasia Romanov. But I was so excited and I just felt like it just went round in a big boring circle and nothing changed. Like the characters were pretty much in the same position, almost exactly actually the literal same position that they started the book in, but with maybe a bit more knowledge that hadn't accelerated the plot. They just knew more. They hadn't achieved anything, they just knew more. So I was very disappointed by that one, and that has kind of put me off the author and made me reluctant to pick this up. That being said, it does sound interesting. Like it sounds like a book that I like, but so did Blood Air, and I was disappointed by that one. So we'll see how this goes. I'm open to DNFing, but I also, like I said, my soul wants a shelve. So I'm also really hoping that I do end up enjoying this one. I'm 146 pages into Song of Silver Flame Like Night now, and it is okay. So so far, which I'm actually really sad to say because I feel like this one started really strong. I really like the writing style, and I feel like the whole setup of this with the world building and the atmosphere was really well done. And I don't know what's happened since then. I don't know whether we've got into the action a little bit too quickly, because there is a little bit of action throughout what I've read so far, or whether it just became, I feel like the magic system feels very complex, but I don't know if the way that it is being presented to the reader is the most digestible. So I feel like I've gotten lost somewhere and my enjoyment has waned a little bit, and I'm actually sad about it because I did really enjoy the beginning. But this one is mainly centering on colonization, and we are following a young woman called Lan whose mother was killed when the Atlanteans arrived in her country. So her mother was, I can't remember exactly what her job was, but she was somebody very important in this society, and Lan had a very good upbringing up until her mother died and burned this symbol into her arm. Since then, Lan has been a song girl. She has a beautiful voice and she performs for the Atlantean generals and the nobility. Because she does have this scar, I'm pretty sure that there's only really her who can see it. She has been pursuing the origin and the meaning of the symbol that has been burned onto her, and she goes to this old man who runs a store, who, if he procures anything that has any strange symbology in it, he does pass it on to Lan. However, right at the beginning, she crosses paths with this general who kind of sets his sights on her, and when she goes to work that night, the general is there again and he wants to spend the night with her. So she says absolutely not, stands up against her madam, and nothing really happens because she's powerless in the society. But when she goes into the room where the general is, she kind of loses control of something inside of her and ends up killing him with a magical ability that she did not know that she had. Now, this is a dual perspective novel as well, and we are following a guy called Zen, who is a practitioner of the magic of this world. So I'm not sure when the magic disappeared. I'm not sure whether it is directly tied to the Atlanteans, but I do know that they have a hand in suppressing the magic and outlawing the magic of the people native to this country, while they do wield magic themselves. And Zen is a practitioner. I don't know at this point whether he is intentionally looking for our main character for any reason, but when he stumbles upon her and discovers that she does have this magical ability, he takes her, or decides to take her, to the one remaining school of practitioners in the country so that she can have her magic unlocked, because this mark that her mother has burned onto her is a seal that is suppressing, I think it's suppressing her magical ability. The issues that I'm having with the magic system, I think, is that it is different for the Atlanteans than it is for our main characters. They have a different type of magic. Now, the magic that the Atlanteans have feels very much like Mistborn, and I don't know how many magic systems there are in fiction that stem from the use of metal and different types of metal. I thought that the magic system in Mistborn was relatively unique, and I haven't read every book ever, so I can't say that for sure, but I know that one of the things, like before I read Sanderson, as I've been reading Sanderson, everyone kind of says how unique his magic systems are, so I thought that they were completely invented by him. The magic system in here that is utilized by the Atlanteans, they're Mistborns. They're Mistborn. They have like bands of metal up their arms. Each metal represents a different ability. Not many people can use more than one. And it also talks about alloys as well, which is, when we're talking about metal, it's like a big part of the Mistborn magic system. So that made me feel a little bit weird. And this kind of feels like a mix between Mistborn and Star Wars, because then the magic that the main character has is based on ki, which is like yin and yang, which I think is one of the main philosophies of, it's one of the Chinese religions. I can't remember. I think it's like Taoism. I don't think it's Buddhism, but it's all about like energy and life force and balance. So like it makes sense, obviously, that in a Chinese fantasy that would be the dominant magic system that is used by our main characters. It's just the way that it's described that is given Star Wars, because they keep talking about the way, and there was literally a line that Zen said to Lan earlier in this book that was essentially a version of do or do not, there is no try. So I feel like I'm seeing the echoes of other things throughout here. I do like our characters, our main character of Lan especially, I'm hoping for a little bit more depth to both of them. I feel like they started off very strong at the beginning, but now 100 pages in, like, I don't feel like they're getting any deeper at this point, and there's still plenty of the book to go, but I just feel like there's something with the progression of this book, the way that it's progressed, that is not holding my attention. And like I said, it does get quite action based quite early on, as our main character ends up killing this general, which sets off a chain of events that compels her into like the rest of the novel and like really gets the plot going. And because of the volatile nature of the situation they're in now, with the Atlanteans pursuing them, there is like a bit of a pace to the book as they're fleeing pursuit. Almost. I feel like this is very reminiscent of Blood Air to me though, where it started off strong and I kept expecting it to level up, and I don't know whether it just stayed all on one note or it failed to kind of grip me and captivate me. But I feel like this book is going along the same route right now, which is a shame, because I also really like these guys play into the history of the world. I think they're gods and I like all of that stuff. It's just a lot of different elements right now, and I feel like the way they're weaving together isn't seamless, and it's leaving me wanting something, but I just don't know what it is that I want. I've read quite a bit more of Song of Silver Flame Like Night. I'm 234 pages into it. I'm past the halfway point now, and I am really sad to say that I'm going to be DNFing this one here because I just can't get into it. I am confused as to why, because I do like the writing. When I'm reading it, there are little bits that I'm picking up on that I'm finding very intriguing regarding the world. There's like a magic school element in here that's introduced. It kind of really gets into it in between like our last update and where I'm up to now, and I like that we keep building upon the world and introducing new elements, but I don't know whether it's just not executed, like I said, in a way that's especially digestible, so it doesn't feel the most cohesive, or what the issue is. Like, I don't know what the issue is with me in this book, but it's like, I don't want to say that it's surface level because it doesn't feel surface level, but it's almost like there's nothing going on underneath. Like, I can't break through the surface of this book to enjoy it in any way. And I'm not saying it's bad, because if I were to go through all of the different elements of this book, the characters, I have no complaints. The writing, I have no complaints. The only solid complaint that I have is that I do feel like it is quite complex, and I feel like the way that it has been delivered is not the smoothest manner, because it's just not sinking in. But that could be a me issue. Like, I've read The Lord of the Rings multiple times, I've watched the movie multiple times, and that is also a story that I just can't break through. Like, it just does not sink in for me. So it's not that I'm saying necessarily that it's the book's problem. It could very well be my problem, but like the atmosphere, no complaints. The plot, no complaints. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm just not enjoying this book. So I was kind of determined to continue, and then I started the last chapter and I was like, you know what, like, it's too hard for me to focus. It's too hard at the halfway point of a fantasy book for me to continuously keep drawing my attention back and stay focused on this story. And knowing that I've read a book by Amelie Wenzhou before, which I do feel like I had a similar experience with Blood Air, where there were so many bits that I was enjoying. Like, I aside from by the time I got to the end, I realized that in terms of like plot progression, we hadn't really had any. I didn't have any complaints about like the world, the writing of that one either. So I don't know if Amelie Wenzhou is just not the author for me. I do have one other book by Amelie Wenzhou though, and I've been waiting until I was doing this update to look up the books, but I want to look up on Goodreads the average rating of Blood Air, Song of Silver Flame Like Night, and the other Amelie Wenzhou book that I still have, which is the Scorpion one. It's like the recent release. So Blood Air has a 3.82. Not terrible. I am expecting them all because there's nothing wrong with the books. They're just not, there's just something missing from them. So I'm not expecting them to have terrible ratings. It's just if the Scorpion one is not significantly higher rated than these two, then I'm also going to be on haul in that one, because I don't see the point in me attempting it. I'm just wasting too much time on them as well, because there's nothing glaringly wrong with them. It's taken a long time for me to call it quits. I mean, I finished the other one. So this one has a 3.78 rating, so it's like a 0.04 less than Blood Air. So very, very similar. And so if the other one, which is the Scorpion and the Night Blossom, is the same. We're on haul at 3.79. Yep, that one's going too. So for the purpose of Shelve It or Scrap It, this one is going to be a scrap. I am once again very sad about it because why am I cursed with not liking the nicest naked hardcovers? My favorite thing on a special edition is a printed naked hardcover, and yet I keep unhauling all of the best ones. The only good one that I've kept is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Ariu. Mistress of Lies was unhauled. The Night Ends with Fire, was that the nice one? Yeah, it was The Night Ends with Fire, right? Or was it? No, it was of Jade and Dragons, unhauled. Song of Silver Flame Like Night, unhauled. I am cursed. But then in terms of magical readathon, because I am DNF in this, I actually, when I was watching the closing sprints for the readathon, G awarded everybody a duplicate of the last scroll that they purchased. So I actually have a spare DNF scroll, which I'm going to use to count this towards my calling. So that means that I've completed all of my mandatory prompts for Magical Readathon now, and I'm just, for the last 4 books that we're going to be reading or attempting for this vlog, I'm just going to fill in some of the other prompts that I haven't yet gotten to for the readathon. So I'm going to take you over to the stacks, and then we're going to review that prompt list and see what I might be picking up next. So first up, let us not forget that we are going to be scrapping the Scorpion and the Night Blossom. This one is a quite recent FairyLoot adult pick. It's actually only from February this year, but I just don't think it's worth it for me to attempt another Amelie Wenjou book. Once again, it's not my favorite hardcover, but it is once again, look at that artwork. Very nice edition. I just think the chances of me actually enjoying this one are very, very slim. So unfortunately it has to go. I am upset about a lot of the books that I've scrapped this month, if I'm being honest. But in terms of the Magical Readathon prompts, there's 2 books that I would definitely like to work into this episode as like a couple of mood reads. I don't know when to read them though, because obviously like I can't know for sure whether I'm going to shelve or scrap something, but there are things like I can make an educated guess about. But also in terms of, in case we do get a shelve, I don't want to fulfill the easiest prompts that are left now. I want to leave those in case we do have a shelve. So I think the hardest one that we have that would maybe be a good one to fulfill right now is Animal Studies, which is steal a book from another TBR. I'm torn between, because I don't have to fulfill all of them. I'm torn between going for that one or to do a first sentence challenge where I try 3 first sentences and pick one. But I like the spontaneity of stealing a book from another TBR. So I'm going to do some research. I'm going to start with G's TBR and see if there's anything on there that's in the stats, because there's a lot of popular books in here, so I feel like the chances of crossover are pretty likely. So I'm going to check out G first, and if not, go through the my subscription feed and find some other people who participated in Magical Readathon and see what they have on their TBR, and I will report back when I find something. I have found one. I haven't finished going through G's TBR yet, but she did have Sorcery and Small Magics by Megaducey on there, which is this one. I'm pretty sure this is another recent FairyLoot pick, October last year. So this is an option, I guess, because I found one. I'm going to continue through G's TBR, see if there's anything else, and if so, I'll choose between them. If not, we'll go with Sorcery and Small Magics. She has lots of interesting looking romance books on here that I do not have, which is unfortunate. She does have Dungeon Crawler Carl on her TBR, which is actually on my general TBR for this month, but I don't own it, so we can't read it for Shelve It or Scrap It. I'm going to be listening to the audiobook, and I also have it out on Kindle Unlimited, so it sadly does not qualify because of this challenge. We are physical books only. So I guess for Animal Studies we are going to be reading Sorcery and Small Magics by Megaducey. So this is one that I've only really heard glowing reviews about, so it could very well be a shelf for me. However, it has a few key elements that I do not traditionally enjoy, one of which, a main one I think, is that it is pretty historical. It also has like a not necessarily cozy element of it, but I feel like it has a cottagecore charm to it, which is not a buzzword to me. It does feature a queer romance as well. The reason why I feel like it's historical is because there's words in the synopsis like curmudgeon. So I feel like it has that kind of historical lean to it. It's reminded me a little bit of like a queer Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It is an enemies to lovers story following, I think, 2 sorcerers. So one of them's like a very serious, ambitious, accomplished sorcerer, and the other one is a master of small magic. So he performs little tricks like conjuring butterflies. It's given kind of like very light-hearted, like magical and charming. These 2 are enemies. They don't like each other, and they end up in a mix-up with a forbidden spell that binds them together. So they have to unite to try and break this spell. So it's not given like save the world vibes. It's given like small, constrained plot, and I do feel like it is going to lean into, and if not the cottagecore, it's going to have like an element of like whimsy and charm to it, which is what I think I'm not going to like about it, because that's typically not my vibe. But like I said, I've heard glowing reviews about this, and just because I don't typically enjoy things doesn't mean that they always don't work for me. So I am willing to give this one a try. Thank you very much to G for putting this on your TBR so that I could sample it, because I do feel like this is the kind of book that would have been on my TBR for a long time, because I'm not particularly drawn to it because it has so many elements that are the opposite of what I usually like. I have just gotten back off I think like a 3.5 mile walk with Brie, and along the way on my travels I listened to, I think, around 30%, maybe 25 of Sorcery and Small Magics by Megan Ducey. I did start and read like the first 5 chapters, I think, on my Kindle, because Libby is my smartest tool in my arsenal that I have right now. So I got the ebook on Libby just because it's so much easier to read on a Kindle, and I picked up the audiobook honestly just because I've been feeling quite restless, quite anxious recently, and physical activity really helps me to work through that. And obviously listening to an audiobook also enables me to multitask at the same time. Honestly though, even though picking up the audiobook wasn't necessarily intentional on my part, it is quite a decent one. It's not the most elaborate thing I've ever heard, but it is an enjoyable experience. And in this one we are following 2 guys who attend the same like kind of magic school. It feels like a bit bougier than school. It feels more like a guild. There's a lot of like prestige surrounding it, and our main character whose perspective we read from is, I'm pretty sure he's called Leo. We don't hear his name a lot because it's his perspective we're reading from. I'm pretty sure he's called Leo though, and he comes from this prestigious family. There's multiple different types of magic in this world, but there are essentially people who can perform spells and there's people who can write them. And our main character, much to the disappointment of his family, is somebody who writes spells. He is not able to actually perform grand magic. So the other main character in here, who's definitely going to be a love interest, is Sebastian Grimm, and he is extremely talented at grand magic, but he comes from not necessarily a poor family, but not an elite family. They're working class. His family like run a farm, and he is quite aloof. Like if you'd have just introduced me to both of them, I would have assumed, I guess, that Sebastian came from privilege, although he does have a level of seriousness that Leo doesn't because of the privilege that he's grown up with. Everything's like a little bit more of a joke to him and not too serious because he doesn't have to work as hard. He'll get by on his family name, even though he does still have to bear the pressure of his familial disappointment. These 2 don't like each other. Leo also goes out of his way to play pranks on Sebastian that he doesn't find as funny. Like he cast a charm on him to change the colour of his hair to pink, and Sebastian really didn't like it. And honestly, I relate to Sebastian in that way. I don't find things like that funny, especially when the like recipient isn't matching your energy. But they are put together to complete an assignment, and Sebastian takes one of the spells out of Leo's spell book and casts it, and it's supposed to change the colour of his eyes, I think, but it actually is a control spell. And from that moment on, Leo has to do everything that Sebastian tells him to immediately. Like he doesn't have a choice. Now there is a very important set of trials coming up at this magic school that the main characters have to complete. They are struggling to break this curse because the people around them, their like teammates, their classmates who they've asked to help them try and break this curse, are very busy and have their own things to focus on. So together they have to embark upon a journey to find a powerful sorcerer era, which I think is where the book is going. That's kind of where I'm at, where they have to figure out how to break this curse, because otherwise they're assuming that it's going to end really, really badly for Leo. So I am enjoying it. It is good. It's fun to read. It's fun to listen to. It is quite an easy one. I think it's more about the vibes and the story than it is anything else, which, as you guys know, like, I do prefer to read like really in-depth, gritty fantasies, and this is definitely more like it. Is certainly not an epic. When we're introduced into this story, we kind of already know the characters. The characters already are, like, we're not really getting into detail of like their childhood and how they know each other and how they arrived at this school. Like, they're already there. They're already almost in the thick of the action. And I think by the page 30 mark, this curse has already been cast and the main characters are starting to learn about it. So we do get right in there, and it does remind me of, there needs to be a new word for cozy fantasy, where it's not quite cozy because there is a little bit more going on. There is a plot, but the stakes are not but they are high. I guess what I mean is, like, the stakes for the world aren't high. Like, if they don't break this curse, it's going to end terribly for Leo. The rest of the world is probably going to be fine, I'm assuming, at this point. So it is that kind of story, whereas I am generally more into the save the world stuff. So it's not bad. I like it. It's compelling. It is entertaining. I don't think it's going to change my life, but we'll see. Maybe it'll just be a really sweet, charming story that wins me over. We'll find out. It is a glorious day in the UK today, as you can probably see. So my plan is, because it's a Monday, so it's really quiet here in this particular neighborhood as well on a Monday, which I love. So my plan is to sit in the garden for most of the day and read. Once I'm done filming vlog updates, I'm going to move into the sun a little bit more, I think, and read a little bit more of this and see how far I get into it through the rest of the morning and maybe into the afternoon as well. I could do with doing a bit of editing, but I do just really want to make the most of the weather and the quiet, especially today. So I swapped my coffee of this morning for an afternoon beer, but I'm still here. I'm still out here. I have been listening to the audiobook while I work on one of my Patreon bookmark designs. I did read some physically earlier. I moved into the sun, as I said I was, but I got a little bit too warm, so we moved back into the shade, and I decided to take the time to work on those illustrations while I did continue on with the audiobook. And according to Spotify, I am now at the 65% mark. I'm in chapter 22 and I'm still having a good time. It is reminded me a lot of books like Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, where there is a point, there is a plot, but it's not, like I said, it's not like an end of the world kind of situation. And like with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, we have these two people who generally in their everyday life are in forced proximity with each other. In Emily Wilde, they work in the same place, they're colleagues. In this book in particular, they are students at the same institution, and while they're both incredibly talented and gifted in their own ways, I don't think Leo is. Either that or his particular talent has not been discovered yet because of the methods of teaching that they employ at the magic school that he attends. So there's like a bit of rivalry going on in both of these books. While we have a slightly cottagecore aesthetic setting, like a lot of this book is spent traveling through a magical forest where things are not as they seem. They're searching for this elusive, like mythical sorcerer. There's monsters and beasties in the wood, and they've just like bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. And across the course of the book, they're obviously like actually properly getting to know each other, as opposed to just being really rigid in these quite inaccurate beliefs that they have about each other. And you know, they always say it, there's a fine line between love and hate. So I feel like we can tell where this is going, but then once again, in the style of like Emily Wilde, it is a very like slow build throughout the book where they're not even at this point, I would say, friends. And then due to some of the circumstances of this spell that they have accidentally cast and gotten horribly wrong, their feelings are also not especially trustworthy. So yeah, I'm having a good time. It is a very good audiobook to listen to while I'm working on something else because it's not overly complex. I'm enjoying the writing, I'm finding it immersive and atmospheric, but that's pretty much the extent of my enjoyment, which is what I predicted. And one of the reasons why I didn't think I would enjoy this book, it's not that I don't think that I would like it, it's just I didn't think that I would love it. And that is how I'm feeling right now, once again, very similarly to how I felt about Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's not that I don't like it, I just don't love it. Like it's a good book, it's just not my book, you know?
But Butterflies are floating like your red hair in the breeze. Spring awakening, new love takes me into lilac dreams. Lay beside me, whisper softly your sweet empathy.
I have finished Sorcery and Small Magics. As you may be able to tell, this was a pretty quick read. I have read all but 50 pages, I think, of this book today, which is quite impressive for me. It is not often that I read pretty much an entire book in a day. It is needed right now, so I'm glad that I did, but it is still unusual. I would definitely recommend the audiobook for this as well. I kept flitting between the audiobook and the ebook, depending on what I was doing, but I think that the narrator does a really good job of bringing our characters to life in this, and also the accent and the narration style is very fitting to this kind of story. I enjoyed this. I thought that it was very entertaining. I had a good time with it. I did, however, give it 3 stars, and looking back at the last, because I've just filled in my spreadsheet to get a rating for this book, the last 6 books that I have read, I have given 3 stars. I am struggling. I'm struggling to enjoy things right now. I actually genuinely don't think it's me though. One good thing about this episode, even though this is going to be a scrap, we have a series of scraps, but one good thing about this episode is that I'm clearing through quite a few books that I don't think I would reach for with any kind of enthusiasm. This is a book that when I unboxed it, I identified that it probably wasn't going to be for me, just based on my tastes, and I do stand by that. As much as I had a good time with this, as much as I enjoyed the romance and the adventure and the setting, and I thought the writing was good, and I thought that this was a decent story, I would be equally as happy if I hadn't read this book and had unhauled it unread. Like I'm happy that I read it. I would have been happy if I hadn't read it. Like I don't think I would have missed anything if I hadn't read this book. So yeah, unfortunately it is going to be a scrap. I am desperate right now for a book that I love or like enjoy a lot, because a 3-star for me is something that I really enjoyed. It means that I liked the book, but it also means that I have no strong feelings towards it. I thought that this was really good, but I have no desire to read any more from this world or these characters, so I will not be picking up a sequel in this series when it is released. I do remember when I unboxed this as well that I said how much I really love the design of this book, the colour palette, and I am sad to see it go because of that, but it was already one that kind of mentally I didn't really have an attachment to it because I didn't think I was going to love it to begin with. Great book, not a great book for me in general. I would recommend it though if it sounds like it's something that you would enjoy. So that was the prompt for Animal Studies, which was to steal a book from another TBR. So I have 3 left and they're all pretty easy. I'm going to be going with the one for Artificery next though, which I think is the most difficult of the 3 that I have left. And oh my days. So that one is to look at a clock, and based on what hour it is, you have to read a book with that amount of words or letters in the title. So as you guys can see here, I need to do this quickly. It is 3:59, so we're going with 3, okay? I really didn't know, depending on how long it took me to film this update, whether it would be a 3 or a 4 that we were looking for, which added a little bit of spontaneity to it, but I know that G said in the announcement video to do it like at the time that you watched the video, but I watched the video at the premiere time with everybody else and I thought that was a little bit boring, so I wanted, because I knew I was doing Shelve It or Scrap It, I wanted to do like the time that I had to pick the book, and it was 3:59, so we are looking for a book with 3 words in the title, because I think 3 letters is not possible. Let's see what we've got. I haven't prepared for this one as well, which makes it exciting. I was hoping that one of those 2 books that I wanted to pick up would have been eligible for this, like the stars would have aligned. Unfortunately, that is not the case, but we still have 2 prompts left, so we still have hope. And I know that both of them fit for one of them. I wanted to see where if I could fit the other one in somewhere before I went with that. But anyway, Artificery. I think for 3 words we are going to have like quite a bit of choice. There's a lot here that I can see immediately like that fall into the format of the something something. So we have the Phoenix Keeper, Until We Shatter is 3 words. Ooh, this one down here is just off screen. You can actually see there's 2 next to each other here. All right, calm down. A Fragile Enchantment and Sleep Like Death would both count. I kind of don't want to do fantasy though. I just a lot of fantasy recently. So if we could break it up a little bit, we would be looking more on this side of the stack. So sadly, some of the easy quick reads I have here have 2 words in the title, like The Boyfriend and My Fault. For 3 words, we have Seven Faceless Saints, The Last Raven, and The Veiled Kingdom. Book Lovers is 2. I have so many good options for 2 words. I think we have to go with fantasy, which is actually really rude. I'm not in the mood to like really start something right now, if that makes sense. So I guess like a standalone would be great. And with that in mind, I am going to go for this one. It's time. It's finally time. We're doing The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd-Jones. So The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd-Jones is, I'm pretty sure, one of my self-destructing books for 2025. So it's always good to actually pick one of those up, seeing as I am on a time crunch with those. I have to read them or attempt them within a 1-year period or unhaul them unread. So we love to multitask. But the reason why this is one of my self-destructing books is just because the synopses of Emily Lloyd-Jones's books just really don't appeal to me, and in spite of that, I have heard so many good reviews, so we need to find out if I'm wrong, and I have been wrong in the past. There are many times that I have been wrong, and this may just be one of them. The reason why I picked this one specifically right now is because I'm pretty sure it is a standalone story. It's actually not too big as well. It's 343 pages, and it is from an Illumicrate from July 2022, so I have had this one for quite some time. So the Fae are present in this world, but it's following a girl called Mare who has been running for years from the prince who bound her into his service and forced her to kill people with her magic. So she has been trying to escape this life. She wants a life far from power and politics, but then her old handler, who is the king's spy master, returns with a proposition to use her powers to bring down the prince that abused her for all these years. I anticipate, as usual, we are going to have a romance in here as well. I think part of the reason why this doesn't appeal to me is because it is based on water magic. Watery books in general don't work for me more often than they do, but hopefully this one will be the exception, and if not, at least it's another self-destructing book that I've read. I may be looking slightly worse for wear, a little bit smudgy around the eyes. I've just got in from a dinner, and before I took all my makeup off and got ready for bed, I'm not actually going to go to bed, or at least I'm not going to go to sleep yet. I'm going to stay up and read for a while. But before I took all my makeup off, I wanted to bring you guys a check-in because I have reached the end of part 1 of this book. So I'm like 135 pages into it out of 340. So I've got like 200 pages to go, which means that I am assuming that part 1 is the biggest section of the 3. Maybe not actually. Let's look. Oh, part 2 is exactly the same length at 134 pages, which makes part 3 the shortest at less than 100. But I am kind of enjoying this, but I am quite trepidatious because I feel like a lot of what I'm reading so far is potential. And because of the length of this book, I'm not sure whether the potential is going to be met. So let's wind it back, talk about what this book is about. This one is I don't know if it is a standalone actually. Shall we look this up? Because I've seen a book that looks very similar to it cover-wise, that I don't know whether it's just another Emily Lloyd-Jones book or whether it is directly tied to this one. Okay, no, they're just similar covers so that they all kind of look similar to each other. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they might be connected, like set in the same world, but it's not a direct sequel. So this one is a standalone fantasy that is based in like Welsh mythology and folklore. We are following a girl who is the last water diviner, and in this world there are I think they're called the other folk, and they are the Fae. And there are some people, there's the Fae, and then there's some people who are born with magic and some people who bargain for magic. And our main character as the last water diviner is somebody who was born with this very powerful magic and an intense connection to water. People of this caliber in this world are very valuable, and at a very young age she was taken by the prince to the castle or the palace and trained to be useful to him in the future when she came of age. And come of age she did. She was trained by the royal spy master to be a very good spy, and she was taken out into the field where she killed a lot of people, kind of unknowingly actually, but at the behest of the prince. And she has run away since then. She got herself out of this situation, and the spy master finds her. Now she is immediately worried because she thinks she's going to be taken back to the prince, but he actually has a proposition for her, and he would like her to help him to destabilize the prince. He claims that he did not know what the prince was making her do, and that he was also abused by the prince. And to make their mission a little bit easier, give them more chance of success, they hire a guy with the ability to kill to come along with them. So as I said, some people are born with magic, like our main character Mare, and some people, like our other character, who I think is called Fane, bargain for their magic, and he has been given 7 deaths in exchange for 7 years of service. So he can take away 7 people's lives in exchange for 7 years of service to the other folk. And they all embark upon this mission to find a magic well that is giving the place, like the palace, or I think it's a castle, where the prince lives, power, so that they can take away his power and start to destabilize him. So they have the guy who's able to kill. The spy master knows his way around, and the water diviner is going to be able to find the well. And then they also recruit like a couple of side heisters, shall we say, who know a lot about magical artifacts or have other skills that are going to help them on this quest. So first off, I really like the writing and the atmosphere in here, and I really like where this story is going, but I'm kind of worried about it. I don't know why I can't be somebody who just enjoys things without thinking too hard about it, but I am a little bit worried because when I started reading this, I really sunk into the atmosphere quite quickly. I don't think that this is necessarily set. Yeah, it's not set in another world because it says the Kingdoms of Wales. So this is set in our world, a version of our world that has magic. It feels like high fantasy, like a very classic high fantasy setting, which I'm very much enjoying with the setting, especially like around the towns. It's reminding me, because I'm somebody who I see things when I read, like in my head, it plays out like a movie if the atmosphere and the writing is good, which it is in here. And it reminds me of Throne of Glass. Like I feel like I'm in a Darwin. I feel like the cities in Throne of Glass are a little bit bigger than I imagined these to be, but that is the kind of vibes that I'm getting, especially at the beginning where we have Renfrew, who is the spy master, approaching our main character of Mare, and then also afterwards Fane, to invite him or ask them to join him on this quest. That setting was reminding me very much of how I imagined a Darwin to be. So I feel like I've sunk into this quite quickly, like I'm becoming interested in the plot. There are little tidbits about the world that are pulling my attention. The characters are enjoyable. I grow to love characters the further on in the book we go, so like I'm enjoying their perspectives, but I'm not obsessed with any of them at this point. But there's definitely potential for my feelings towards them to continue to warm throughout the course of this book. My worry is though, because apparently I'm somebody who can't enjoy something without overthinking it, is that this feels like good high fantasy. Like it feels like the beginning of Throne of Glass or the beginning of Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, but it's a standalone. And it's not even a long one. So my worry is actually that I'm going to enjoy this one too much to the point where I don't think it's enough. And I feel like if anything, that could be this book's downfall, because right now everything's going well and I'm not getting like a 5-star feeling or anything about it. It could still be a 3. It could still be a 3-star. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it was. But I do like the length of this worries me, especially because it doesn't feel especially fast paced and it doesn't feel rushed, which is great. That's probably why I'm enjoying it. But the pace of it so far is, it's almost like it's leading me to something that's not going to happen. Like it feels like the start of a more epic story than I know it's going to be based on the page count. And so it's almost like it's giving me false promises with the way it's making me feel, with me knowing that it's quite a short book. But I am really enjoying it. I have been dipping in and out of the audiobook as well. Another bonus, something else in this book's favor, if you are an audiobook listener, the audiobook is narrated by Myra Quirk, who is one of the narrators from the 4th and 5th book of the Red Rising series. So the first 3 books are single perspective from Darrow's perspective, and then the next 3 books are multi-perspective. Now, they started out by being narrated, like each perspective was a different narrator, and then they changed some of the narrators for book 2, and then everyone complained. It was like, can we just go back to the regular guy narrating everything? And they did that for Lightbringer, but the narrator they had for one of the characters, who is a new character, so I don't mind telling you who she is because she's not somebody who's present in the first 3 books. She's new for the later ones. It's called Lyria, and she is narrated by Moira Quirk, and she does an amazing job on Red Rising. I feel like slightly better than in here, but that could be just like the story style, you know? But the emotion in her voice is so raw in Red Rising. I think she did such a good job. It can be a little bit much because it's really like heavily accented and really like emphatic, but I do really feel like in emotional scenes, like she really like imbues her voice with like rage and fear and despair in Red Rising. So I really liked her narration in that, and I was really happy to see her narrating this. This isn't as emotional in her narration so far. Like I said, it can be the book and the characters, not necessarily her, but she is a narrator that I recognized, and I was excited when I heard that she would be narrating this audiobook. So I'm gonna go actually put the audiobook on while I take my makeup off, get ready for bed. I might do, it's like 9:40. Kind of want to finish this today. It would be really helpful to me if I could finish this today. So Curtis has said that he will stay up with me. He's going to do the dishes because we've been out. So he's just gone out with Brie. He's going to do the dishes, and he said he's going to read with me until I finish my book. So it could be a little bit of a late one tonight, just so that I can stay on track with where I'm supposed to be. So expect to see me a little bit later on looking a little bit rougher than I do now, which I mean, half of my eyeliner is pretty much worn off. So you may think it's not possible, but I'm about to prove you wrong. It just hit part 3 of The Drowned Woods, and I was about to come and talk to you guys about how I'm unsure if I like quest-based books. I think I've read, this one is a little bit different, but I think especially in this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, I've read a lot of books that are kind of samey in the formula and the structure of their assembly. So we had like The Teller of Small Fortunes, we've had Sorcery and Small Magics, we also now have The Drowned Woods. This is a little bit different because kind of feels a little bit like The Realm of the Eldlings within the setting. Like that is definitely what it's reminiscent of to me, but then the plot itself being a heist is reminding me a little bit of Five Broken Blades, which is a book that a lot of people didn't like. I read it for an episode of Shelve It or Scrap It and I loved it. I've ordered the sequels, have yet to read them, but really enjoyed it. It's not the most unique thing I've ever read, but it has like a ensemble cast heist plotline executed in a way that was like fun, compelling and interesting. So it's kind of like those two things together, and I do feel just like at heart I am a series reader, so a standalone story just doesn't really do it for me because I'm in it for the long haul. Like I want to know like what the plot twist is going to be that pulls me through the rest of the series. Like I want to know where this relationship trajectory is going, not right now, but like in 4 books time, where are we going to be, and how am I going to be able to draw it back to this moment and the moments that we're having right here. And I think to read a standalone a lot of the times, especially when it's a fantasy, when it's quest based like this, is to be a little bit more surface level with it, to be a little bit more in the moment. And I'm not in the moment, I'm in the future. I'm always in the future. It's a problem I have. I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to do when I'm doing the thing that I'm doing right now, and it stresses me out. But I do think I'm the same with reading. Like I'm not enjoying the moment of the book because my mind's like racing ahead, like what is this plot point for, like what are we foreshadowing, who is this person going to be in the future. And when you have a standalone, like the plot is just a little bit less intricate because you just don't have as much space. And I find, I guess, that the part of my brain that when I'm reading is like puzzling everything out doesn't really have as much to work with, and so I struggle. Like I don't really like action scenes. Throughout this last section that we've had, it very much felt like it was falling into the trap of, or not the trap, but the same kind of formula or structure as The Teller of Small Fortunes or Sorcery and Small Magics, where we are on a quest and along the way we're going to find more people, they're going to join our cause, they're going to be our found family, we're going to grow closer throughout the course of the story, and it's going to be a series of events and complications that are thrown into our path as we are trying to achieve this one thing that we've actually been set out and trying to achieve at the end. But it's actually more about the journey than it is the destination and the friends that we meet along the way. And then the last last chapter of section 2 happened and we got the plot twist. I got to the plot twist and I mean, I'm not obsessed, but I immediately, it was like a flip switched in my brain and I was like, okay, I'm interested again. Like we're changing up the trajectory of this plot a little bit and I like what I'm seeing. So yeah, it did lose me a little bit in that second section. We had a strong start, a mediocre middle, and hopefully we will have an enjoyable final part of this. We're well into the thick of the plot now, as you can imagine, with 80 pages left of a 340-page standalone. So I'm expecting for things to come quite thick and fast at this point, but at the same time, I don't know which direction the plot is going to go in from here because we've uncovered some information that will definitely change things, but I don't know to what degree right now. I did stay up and finish The Drowned Woods last night, and you know what? I did really enjoy that final section. And in terms of ratings, it's come out as just about a 4. It feels very much like a 3.5 to a 4 for me. I didn't really love the second section of it. That is where I really did lose a little bit of interest. However, the beginning, the setup, the atmosphere, the writing, I really enjoyed. And then the way that it came together at the end after the plot had pivoted a little bit from the typical heist that we were following, and we had some revelations, we had some plot twists, and the way that the story wrapped up, I did really like. I will say though, I would have liked it if it didn't have that final chapter. This book, the way that the sections are split up, there's like a tale at the beginning, like a little bit of folklore at the beginning of each section, which tells the story of one of the key characters in a like fairy tale-esque manner. And we do also end the book on one of those. So before that, there is a final chapter. I don't mind if we'd have had this fairy tale-esque bit at the end to kind of come full circle with the book, but the chapter before that, the final chapter, honestly I could have done without, because I feel like the note that it ended on would have been so impactful. I would have really liked that, and I'm sad that we had that little additional bit. I mean, it was fine and I enjoyed how the story ended with it, but the impact of like the last line of the last chapter, the one before the final one, I feel like that would have been such a good ending note for this book. So probably, actually this is it not? Is this the only 4-star? I'm gonna have to check, but I'm pretty sure this is the only 4-star read that we've had throughout this entire episode. So it is the book that I have enjoyed the most. I mean, it's barely a 4-star, but it is indeed a 4-star. However, I think I'm going to be scrapping this one. I was torn because this reminded me of a couple of books that I have read for Shelve It or Scrap It and shelved in the past. It has a little bit of Rachel Griffin in there, and also a little bit of like A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. Really reminiscent of fantasies that dig deep into folklore and have a element of fairy tale to them without following the kind of typical structure of a modern fairy tale, like, as we've discussed in this video, Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher does it, The Teller of Small Fortunes does it to some degree. So it does deviate a little bit away from that, but it has its roots firmly in like lore and fairy tale, which I did enjoy. I do feel like for me, this could have been a little bit longer. I am a series reader, we know this, and I know I'm feeling a little bit like a broken record right now saying, oh, I wish this would have been a series, like I wish we would have had more from this, and I feel like I would have enjoyed it more. Because I do accept that not everything has to be a series, and I've read some really good standalones. I don't tend to love fantasy standalones, but a good, strong standalone book is fine by me. For fantasy, I do want it to be a little bit longer. I feel like this achieved everything it needed to, but I feel like I would have had a bit of a deeper attachment and a little bit more investment in it if that middle portion, even though I didn't enjoy it, maybe I would have enjoyed it if it was a little bit more drawn out instead of feeling like we were just skipping from event to event. So sadly, we have another scrap, which like I said is good for the outcome of this video, and now we're so close to the end. We only have 2 books to go, so I actually don't want to shelve anymore because a shelve's going to complicate things. So Magical Readathon, we have 2 prompts that we need to fulfill. I mean, we don't have to fulfill any more prompts at all, but for the sake of this video, we have 2 books left and 2 prompts left to fulfill. So the next one I'm going to be going for is astronomy, and the prompt for this is to use a random color wheel to pick a color, and the book has to be that color. So I have my random color wheel right here. I have edited it a bit because when you get the standard one, it has lots of like random shades. Like I don't need blue and light blue and purple and deep purple. Like purple and blue is just fine by themselves. And I also added white, beige and black. I have also checked to make sure that no matter what we land on, I have a book. Anything that I didn't have a book for, I've taken off. If it is here, we have a book that is this color. So let's see what color we're gonna get. Oh, we're not getting what I wanted. Oh. Is that pink? Did we get pink? I'm so happy. I think I know what I want to go for, but just to explore our options. A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Saft is pretty solidly pink. The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten, that has pink flowers on the cover. Something I didn't think of actually is Immortal by Sue Lynn Tan is half pink. Down here, the bottom half of City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaeffer is also half pink. We also have, actually no, down on this side, we have House of Marion. That one I'm pretty sure is predominantly black on the front. It just has a pink spine. Well, the two that I'm most interested in are these two right here. So we have My Fault by Mercedes Ron. This was recently sent to me by Source Books when they launched their UK socials, along with Neon Gods, which we read in this video, and Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert, which I took from my friend's unhaul pile. I really love the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert, but this one, I kind of want to read it because I like Talia Hibbert, but it is a YA romance, so I don't see myself being as invested in it as I was with the Brown Sisters. So I am definitely going to be going with one of these two. I'm pretty sure I've expressed recently that I want to stay away from fantasy a little bit. I've read a lot of fantasy recently, and as you guys can tell from this video, nothing is really working out for me all that much. So I feel like I need a little bit of a genre switch up to freshen things up a little bit. In terms of which of these I think I'm most likely to unhaul if I was looking for a scrap, I actually don't know. I don't know anything about Mercedes Ron. I just know that this is I think it's a Spanish series of movies based on the books. And then they've also made like an English version called like My Fault London. And I feel like this is going to be like the angsty, toxic, like new adult kind of romance that I really enjoy. The style of the movie is in the style of After, so I'm expecting the book to also be kind of similar to that, which, you know, I do eat that shit up. I really do. It is also, I think, the first book in a series, which is a little bit of a downside because I'd rather read a standalone if possible, just because I've started so many series recently, especially through this challenge. And then Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I love the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. I gave the first two 5 stars and the last one 4. This is just a YA, so I don't expect to have that level of investment, which means I feel like it's going to be a cute, fun time, and then maybe I won't have any need for it past that. So I think I'm going to go for this because this is going to be light, it's going to be fun, it's going to be easy. It's hard because they're both contemporary romances, but they're both contemporary romances for very different moods that I could be in. This is going to be a rip-roaring great time, and I'm going to live for the drama. This one is going to be light, cutesy, and easy. So I think this time we're going to go for Talia Hibbert. I'm excited about this. A light, fluffy contemporary romance is just what I need, because even the contemporary romance that I've been reading recently, the last one I read was Neon Gods, and that's like hardcore smut. This is a very different vibe, and I feel like this might be just what I need. It has gone cold in the world again, which I'm actually upset about. I normally like cold weather, but my neighbours are away this weekend, and I really wanted to make the most of the garden, but it seems like I'm just going to be sad and inside instead. But I am going to be sad and inside with my books, and I'm currently 120 pages into Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, and I forgot how much I enjoy Talia Hibbert's writing style. Really do feel, I have no evidence to back this up aside from my own experience and the fact that I've read, this is like the 4th of Talia Hibbert's books that I've read. I'm pretty sure that Talia Hibbert has read the Georgia Nicholson series by Louise Renison, because I truly feel like her writing is so reminiscent of Georgia Nicholson that it just takes me back. Like, that is my favorite series from being a kid, like being definitely in high school, especially around the age of like 14, 15. I love Georgia Nicholson so much. Half of my vocabulary is from Buffy and half is from Georgia Nicholson, and just seeing writing that is so reminiscent of that just makes me feel all of the things. And even though while I am enjoying this story, I do feel like I'm kind of right in the fact that it is a young adult story, so I'm not as into it as I was the Brown Sisters series. The writing style feels really comforting and nostalgic to me, but this one is, I don't know if it's a enemies to lovers story or whether you call it like a best friends to lovers story, because it's actually kind of both. So this is following Brad and Celine, who used to be best friends, but something happened when they started high school. Their parents are best friends as well. I can't remember like how long exactly they've known each other, but they applied to go to the same high school, and they were both a little bit weird. Like Celine has a TikTok where she talks about like conspiracy theories and aliens and things. And Brad, when he was in like primary school before they hit high school, I'm pretty sure he had like glasses and was kind of like nerdy looking. So they were really, really close, and they went to high school, and suddenly like puberty hit and Brad got really popular. He joined the football team, and Celine remained like really quirky and into not necessarily weird stuff, but things that the popular kids aren't, you know? So they kind of tried to stay friends throughout this for a little bit, but they ended up in an argument where Brad feels like Celine abandoned him and Celine feels like Brad left her behind to go and be popular. So since then they have been sworn enemies and they have avoided each other at all costs. However, I'm pretty sure that they're now in sixth form because they're looking at university applications. Celine really wants to go to Cambridge, and Bradley is also, well, I think he's also wanting to study law. They're both looking to study law, but he's looking to go somewhere like Leeds, even though he too, like, he has the same kind of grades as Celine, so they could both go to Cambridge ideally. But they both end up applying for a chance to win the same scholarship where you have to complete a survival course. So you go out into the wilderness and you have to do all of these tasks, and whoever makes it through to the end will be eligible to get this scholarship. And they end up having to work together, agree to a truce to be able to increase their chances to make it through this survival course. So something that I'm really enjoying is that these two are like constantly at each other's throats. The banter is pretty on point, to be honest. It is a little bit more modern than I would like it to be. An example is that Celine has a TikTok and it like keeps referencing things like TikTok, which I do think, I don't know if TikTok's gonna age well, you know, guys. I think it's because it's still relatively new right now. Like the hype of TikTok is still only a few years old. I don't know, like in 10 years how well received like name dropping TikTok is going to be in literature. So I feel like that feels a little bit weird to me. I guess it's the same for like every social media. I guess like Twitter's changed names, but like Instagram has been pretty consistent. YouTube is pretty consistent, but it's a little bit modern in that regard. That kind of makes sense though when we're talking about young adult contemporary. It tends to be very, very common, but I really like the banter between them and the sheer animosity. I feel like on Celine's part it's a little bit more mean, like she feels like she's really out to get him, where he is more kind of just resigned to the fact that she hates him so much that he kind of goes along with it. But there is also very clearly not just an attraction between them, but also a longing for the friendship that they used to have, which we see come in to the forefront again throughout the course of this book. We also have some great rep in here. We have OCD rep throughout here. You constantly, because it is dual perspective, you constantly have his thoughts and like the thought paths that his OCD leads him on, which I do think is really interesting as well. I don't tend to read a lot of young adult contemporary, and young adult contemporary does tend to have a lot of representation just in general, like focusing on diverse topics and diverse characters, but I don't think I've actually read a book that has a character, like a main character that has OCD, where the whole point of the book isn't about that. It is, as I predicted, a very easy read, so I'm expecting it to not take me very long, but I have, as with the last few books I've read, I've been dipping in and out of the audiobook, and I've just run out of audio minutes on Spotify. This is not available on Libby. It's in a queue, like I'd have to join a queue to be able to get the audio. It's not on Everand, and I'm not using a credit from Audible for it, so looks like I am going to have to read this entire thing with my eyeballs, which is inconvenient because I wanted to read a little bit more today that I was going to say that I'm now going to be able to. Like with The Drowned Woods, I'm actually planning on staying up. That's why I'm wrapped up in my pajamas on the couch. I'm actually planning on staying up and finishing this tonight. I just would have been further along by this point in the evening, where it's almost 10 p.m, if I hadn't have run out of audiobook minutes halfway through the day. I had to go for a walk with nothing to listen to today. It was tragic.
Reflections on the water of you close to me.
Good morning, my guys. Please excuse the garden construction sounds. I think it's going to be a pretty quiet weekend garden wise. Just not right now, apparently, which is inconvenient because I am doing sprints a little bit later this afternoon, and so I've decided to enjoy my coffee in the garden. But I was supposed to finish Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute last night, but I actually kept falling asleep in my Kindle. Curtis had to take it off me and like took me in because It's just drop it off. I had it propped up on a pillow and I was like slumping into it, but that's not what I'm here to tell you guys. I'm here to let you guys know that last night I had to think about 80 pages when I was falling asleep, which is really unfortunate because they're quick pages as well, so it was like less than an hour of the book left. I've read a little bit today, so I have about 70 left, I think, and I'm really enjoying it now. Like, it's really cute and really wholesome, which is what I wanted from it. Like, I'm like kicking my feet and giggling a little bit. It's really nice, so that's good, because it was okay when I first started it. Like, I was enjoying it, but it wasn't blowing me away. I am enjoying it a lot more now. Whether I'm enjoying it enough to keep it, I guess we'll find out. Will I reread it? Who knows? But we will see while I have my coffee what the last 70 pages has in store for me. So just before we get into my thoughts on Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, which I have just finished, to address the elephant in the room, yes, I have very scabby eyebrows right now. If you want to know what happened, I do talk about it because it's unavoidable. Like, it's really obvious. I talk about it in the weekly vlog that I'm filming alongside this, which will be the next vlog that you see on my channel. Should be like in a week's time if you're watching this as it is posted. Long story short, I had a waxing accident, completely my fault. I'm an idiot, and now I have to live with the consequences. I haven't been going outside in daylight because I'm embarrassed, but unfortunately the show must go on and I do still need to continue vlogging. And to make matters worse, I'm not just filming one vlog at a time at the minute, I'm filming two simultaneously, so the embarrassment will last twice as long. But in terms of the book, I really loved it. I gave it a high 4-star rating. I thought that the relationship was really cute. I enjoyed the banter between them. I really enjoyed Talia Hibbert's writing. There are flaws in the writing, I would say. Something that stood out to me just a little bit, this is actually kind of nitpicky, is that, I mean, you could say the same for all romance in general, all young adult romance in general. There are times that this did not feel realistic to the way that teenagers would behave. I feel like the language was quite millennial. I think that there are phrases in here that 17-year-olds, people who were 17 in 2023 wouldn't necessarily say. And maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I know that I don't know many teenagers, but I don't know if there are a lot of 17-year-olds that are able to eloquently deliver declarations of love. There is one point as well where the male main character here, Brad, says that he's sad because he thinks he might have broken his glasses and he's sad because they're cute. And I'm like, do boys describe things as being cute? Like teenage boys? I don't know. I mean, some do, obviously, but there were just little moments of that where I was like, okay, this doesn't feel quite realistic. But like I said, that is me being nitpicky. For the most part, I very much enjoyed this book. The representation of OCD in here as well comes from Talia Hibbert's real life experience. She has been diagnosed with OCD, and like I said earlier, it was great to see that representation in a romance novel. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. This reinforced my opinion that I love Talia Hibbert. In terms of a shelve or a scrap though, I think I am going to scrap it. I was torn. I don't think I'm ever going to reread it, but it is the book that I've enjoyed the most this month. So part of me wants to keep it for that, but also in terms of a reference for future videos, if I ever want to recommend this one. I can struggle with object permanence sometimes, like if I can't see something, I forget that it exists, which is why even though I've been reading, like, for example, lots of Libby copies of books that I already own, if I didn't own the books, I wouldn't read them at all because I'd forget that they exist. So part of me is worried that if I unhaul this, like, I'll forget that it's a book that I read and I really enjoyed, and just the act of seeing it constantly will like reinforce my opinion that I really enjoyed it. But I am in a space crisis. That is why we're doing this series, and maybe one day we'll get to a point where I can keep a casual 4-star just to remind myself that it exists. But right now, as it's a book that I don't think I will ever reread or revisit in the future, it is sadly going to be a scrap. This served its purpose, had a great time while I was reading it. It's not a scrap because I didn't love it, it's just a scrap because I don't need to hold on to it. And so we move on to the last book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog. Fingers crossed. I'm pretty confident that this is going to work as being the last book. I'm pretty confident that no matter what happens, we will not be reading another book in this video. I would delete my channel before I read another book for this video, if I'm being honest. It's been a long time filming this one. But the magical readathon prompt that we are going for with this one is the one that I've been saving. It was a really, really easy one. It's Alchemy, and it is to read a book where the title is in all capitals on the cover and the spine and whatever. So I feel like I've really built this up because I've been excited to read this book, and you guys are gonna be like, oh my god, what is it? What is it? I've actually had it out already. So it's The Boyfriend by Freedom. Okay, so Frida McFadden is a really hyped thriller author right now. All the girlies are really loving Frida McFadden, and I want to know what the hype is about. So that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about it. I also just love a thriller. They're quick, they're easy, they're compelling. I read them quickly because the nature of a thriller is to make you want to keep reading. So I'm excited for that experience, and I'm also excited because I kind of get confused with hyped thriller authors just because I don't think I've read any of the ones that everybody talks about. So I haven't read any Riley Sager yet. I do think I own a Riley Sager though. It's Lucy Foley one. There's also Lisa Jewell, and I don't understand, because when I read a thriller, for me, it's like a singular experience. I don't think about them in terms of authors just because that's the way that I enjoy thrillers, if that makes sense. Like, it's a singular experience that I read to have a good time, and then typically I do unhaul my thrillers. There's not many that I keep. So I'm interested what it is about particular authors like Frida McFadden that people keep eating up that make them such compelling authors that people want to continue picking things up by them. And actually, I have read a popular thriller author or like a mystery thriller author. I read a Ruth Ware book and I hated it. So hopefully that doesn't happen for me with Frida McFadden, but this is one of the ones that was sent to me by Source Books. Thank you very much, Source Books. And also I think this is the second of the Source Books ones I've read. Yeah, because the other two are still here. It helps that they sent me like some of their bestsellers, like their fan favorites, which means that they're really hyped and I'm intrigued to get to them. But this one, I actually have no idea what it's about. I don't often look. Oh, Frida McFadden writes The Teacher. I heard about that one. Oh, so this one is about a woman who is struggling to find the man of her dreams, and she finds this perfect guy who is a doctor. He's her new boyfriend, and then somebody is murdered in a hospital, and it's the latest in a string of murders. The victim apparently is dating the murderer before they die, but then I'm just confused because, like, wouldn't people know who the person who's died is dating? Like, if I went on a date with someone, my friends would know about it, so they'd know who they were. Anyway, I'm not going to think about it too hard because I want to experience the book. She obviously suspects this guy that she's just started dating. So it's 360 pages. I'm hoping to have a rip-roaring time. Like I said, I am going to be doing sprints today, and I've actually just thrown an extension cord out into the garden, so I'm going to try and set up sprints there. And I do my best reading. I do my best work in the garden. So hopefully we will get through a significant chunk of this today. I have cracked the 100-page mark in this. I'm on page 108 and I am enjoying it. It's doing exactly what I needed it to do. It is super compelling. I am flying through it and I am very intrigued, but I don't know if I'm intrigued for the right reasons because I feel like this is quite predictable right now based on the fact that when I told you guys the synopsis of this when I picked it, I read this much of the synopsis and abbreviated it. Didn't even read this much. And I feel like based on what the synopsis gave me, I knew everything, or I know everything that is going to play out in this. That being said, I don't know if Frida McFadden wants me to think that I know everything that's going on so she can blindside me with something later, because it's early days as well. I've still got like 2/3 of this book left, and typically with thrillers, the plot twists, they don't come at the beginning, do they? They come at the end. This one is dual perspective, actually. It is set currently in the past and the present. I don't know whether the past is going to meet the present eventually, but we are following a woman who is struggling today, and she is using this app which is like Hinge and Tinder. It's called Cinch, and she meets this guy for a date who turns out to be not the person who he was in the pictures. He's rude, he's pushy, he's obnoxious, he overcharges her for her part of the meal that they have. He calls her a tease because she doesn't want to kiss him. He like pretty much attacks her, and this other very attractive, very handsome guy steps in and like kind of diffuses the situation. These two have an immediate attraction, but they don't exchange details, and she goes home and she talks to her friends about what happened. She realizes that this is kind of like a missed attraction, and she wants to find this guy's details to reconnect with him. Now, in the midst of this, one of her best friends is talking about this doctor guy that she has been dating for the past year, who she wants to go exclusive with, like she's really into him. And lo and behold, that is the girl that turns up dead, which is outlined in the synopsis, that somebody is murdered and the killer is somebody who is known for murdering women that he dates. In my mind, it is obvious that this guy that our main character met directly before seeing her friend who'd just come back off a date is going to be this killer. That seems obvious. So I'm thinking that it mustn't be the case, right? And it was also like super obvious to me that it was her friend who was going to die based on the information that we get like in their first meetings. We also have a couple of scapegoats in here because that guy she went on a date with, he is not letting things go. Like he is insistent on apologizing for his behavior and getting her to date him. So he is a very obvious suspect. And then there is this creepy guy that their other friend is dating who is also like the superintendent of the building, who is another perfect suspect for this murder. Everything just seems a little bit obvious right now. So I'm assuming that it actually isn't, but who knows? Maybe it is. What I'm really hoping that Freida McFadden does is bring something out of left field, like something wild and crazy that I haven't thought about to spice things up a bit and to like hit me with the unexpected, because I am intrigued about what's going on. But the reason why I'm intrigued is because I'm like, surely this isn't it. Surely the conclusions that I'm being led to are not the actual conclusions, right? So I want to continue reading on to find out more, to add a little depth to this story. It is dual perspective though as well, because we have this guy, his timeline that he's telling is in the past, and he is the very first perspective in this book, and he's talking about this girl. He's a teenager, he's in high school, and he's talking about this girl that he has a crush on and how much he's attracted to her, but also how much he wants to kill her. So something else we have going on in here actually is a little bit of a Joe Goldberg situation. A guy, a serial killer who murders the girls that he's dating. It's throwing it back to his childhood where he's grown up in a house with domestic abuse. He's desperate to protect his mother, but he's in an environment where he's also soaking up all of this toxic masculinity as well. As somebody who is the biggest Joe Goldberg stan, well, I watched for a while. Book 3 was okay. Book 4 was terrible. And then the same with the show, like season 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3 actually, loved them. 4, the worst. 5, satisfactory. So I noticed the like kind of Joe Goldberg parallels we have in here straight away. Regardless though, it is doing what I want it to. It is entertaining me and I'm compelled to continue. It's fast, I'm engaged, and that is what I want from a thriller. The only thing more that I could ask for is some really spicy plot twists in here. So this is probably going to be a pretty quick update because I don't have too much to add from the last time I spoke to you guys at the page 100 mark. But I'm 240 pages into it now, so I have 120 pages to go. Listen, I'm hooked. I'm gripped. I'm in this for the long haul. Like, I am intrigued. I'm locked in. But I'm also still waiting for Freida McFadden to pull something out of the bag because I just cannot believe that the conclusion of this is as obvious as Miss McFadden is making it out to be. Like, there's got to be something more there, because otherwise this is just like a weak Joel Goldberg book. If it's not twisty, if we're just digging into the psyche of this guy, which there is a plot alongside it, like we're looking at this guy's childhood and stuff that happened when he was a teenager, but then we also have the present day of the main character who is dating this guy and like her friend's been murdered. So I feel like we're not going down the like character study route. We are going for like plot heavy, some sort of dynamic twist or ending in here, and I hope that we do, because psychological thrillers are supposed to be the twisty ones, right? They're supposed to be the ones that mess with your head, and right now this is like a bog standard not even a bog standard thriller. What even is that? If this is about a serial killer and we know who the serial killer is from day one, like the tension, it's weird because the tension is still there because I'm still reading it trying to figure out what happens. But then if it turns out that we've known who the killer is all along, like that's going to be disappointing, right? I'm not going to be happy with that. But this is the problem with me and thrillers, where I always expect them to be the most mind-blowing thing I've ever read, and some thrillers are not intended to do that. Some thrillers are not supposed to be super twisty and blow your mind at the end, but that's just the preconceived notion I have of thrillers. So when they don't have the best plot twist ever, I tend to be disappointed, even though I'm reading them for a good time. I'm reading them to be hooked and to be gripped, and this is definitely providing that. Freida McFadden has a very, very compelling writing style, and honestly I feel like that's what I'd heard about this author. Like, you kind of just eat her books up, and I can definitely see that, because I'm shocked that I've read 240 pages because it doesn't really seem like very much has happened at all. It feels like I should be like 100 to 150 pages in, but I have not been bored at all throughout my time reading this book, and that's why I read thrillers, because they're very different from what I typically read, and I love the kind of feeling of losing track of time because I'm so sucked into a story, and the fact that I don't read a lot of them, so I'm not familiar with the genre and the conventions of the genre, makes them extra interesting. for me. So I'm going to be finishing this off very, very soon. I'm going to do a bit of editing and then dive into the end of this book. And fingers crossed it does have a dynamic twist. I mean, if it doesn't, it has still served its purpose for me, but I will probably rate it. Right now it feels like a 4. If it has the best plot twist ever, it could be a 5. If there's no plot twist, probably a 3. But regardless, it's done its job. Like, it's done what I needed it to do, and it's fulfilled the purpose of like what I read thrillers for. Okay, so this is genuinely so funny. I've listened to one extra chapter and I found the plot twist, and it's good. It's not anything crazy complex, but it's simple, but it's good. I have finished The Boyfriend. And when I told you earlier that the plot twist had hit and I could see it coming in, I was wrong. I was wrong, guys. That was not the plot twist. When the plot twist did hit, though, I was out with Brie. I went to the greengrocers and I took her for a walk as well. And I audibly gasped when we got the plot twist in this book. So I gave it 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars. This is the best book that I have read for this video. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was compelling. It was gripping. When there wasn't a plot twist, when I was just listening along and I was like, okay, but what is the twist here? Was still having a great time, was still compulsively readable. And then when the twist hit, if I'm audibly gasping, then that's a 5 star. That is what I want from a thriller. I want to enjoy my time reading it. I want to be riveted. I don't want to put it down. And I want to be shooketh to my very core. So yeah, I had a great time with this one. I will say though, if you are a seasoned thriller reader, take this review with a pinch of salt. I'm not a thriller girly. It's really not that deep for me. I'm just looking to be scintillated and scandalized. And I definitely was while I was reading The Boyfriend. So that is a win for Freida McFadden. And because of that, I was really, really torn about what to do about this book, because I typically a 5 star, you know, we would shelve it, but then it is still a thriller. And when I'm giving this a 5 star rating, it's not like one of my favorite books ever. I will say it's especially rare for me to give a thriller 5 stars, because normally for me to actually be shocked, like, it's hard to do. Because like I said, normally I end up disappointing myself with my unrealistic expectations that I go into thrillers with. So for me to give a thriller 5 stars, incredibly rare, but it's like I gave it 5 stars because it did everything that I needed it to do. But it's not like one of my favorite books of all time. It may be one of my favorite books of the year though, so maybe I should keep it. Should we shelve it? We actually could, because I have a bunch of books that I want to unhaul. So I just stood up and everything. I got up and I perused my shelves and I was like, do I want to shelve The Boyfriend? And I have decided against it. For right now. I actually may revisit this in the future. It's going to be a couple of months until my next unhaul, so I do have time. I may want to reference this if it ends up being like one of my best books of the year or something, so it would be good for me to have a copy. But then on the flip side of that, I do know that I'm probably never going to reread this, because my enjoyment of this, the reason I gave it 5 stars, was pretty much based on the twist. Now that I know the twist, it's never going to have the same impact on reread as it did the first time around. So that is typically the reason why I do unhaul thrillers, normally without a thought. This was such a good one though. I really enjoyed it, and I would really like to read more from Freida McFadden in the future. So we will see, because there are 7 books on my shelves that I'm definitely going to be unhauling at some point soon, either in between the next 2 episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It. So we're going to have a big increase in the number in the stacks actually, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we may end up with a bit of a reduction if I do swap those out, or I may end up doing it in the next episode because it's kind of in keeping with the theme. But sadly, The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden, it was so good. The audiobook for this was really good as well. It is going to be a scrap for now. We'll see. So that brings us finally to the end of, what episode is this? Is it episode 15? I think, of Shelve It or Scrap It. This was an incredible episode with an incredible amount of books. And I think, actually, genuinely, I do think that this is the first episode we've ever had without a single shelve. And for it to be such a high volume episode without a single shelve is insane. So we have scrapped 11 books this episode. Most of them were mediocre. I'm pretty sure all of the fantasy was pretty mid. Something else that's crazy about this episode, especially considering the amount of scraps that we had, is that I only actually DNF'd 2 of them. You guys know me, I'm quick to DNF, and the more we go on with this project, I'm quicker to DNF than ever. And only 2 of these books proved to be not so bad necessarily, but not compelling enough for me to push through. I do think that a big issue with this episode, and one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to put together, is because I have read 8 books in their entirety and not a single one. Well, these 2 I enjoyed. Okay, these 2 genuinely really liked them. The rest of them, they were enjoyable enough not to DNF, so they were enjoyable enough for me to finish them, but they weren't enjoyable enough for me to keep, so I read them in their entirety and then it resulted in a scrap. And then we just have this one book that we're going to be scrapping unread because I have decided during the course of this that I am now done with Amelie Wenzhou, which actually, think about that a little bit, because that is going to form the basis of our next episode. Episode 16 of Shelve It or Scrap It is also going to be a big one. It is going to be another 10 book episode. However, I have learned my lesson during this one and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different which ties into the theme, kind of similar to when I did This Episode Won't End Until I Unhaul 10 Books, except not that, because I said I would never do that again and I still am dead set on never doing that again. So we did start episode 15 with 64 books in the stacks and we are currently ending episode 15 with 53 books. So we have actually removed more books through this episode than I added between episodes last time. So we are ending this episode on one book less than we ended the previous episode on. So we're kind of back where we started, and there is going to be a big increase in the stacks between episodes. One, because I'm behind, so I have 2 unboxings worth of books to add to the stack. So all of the books from my April unboxing and my March unboxing, my March unboxing was a big one, the April one was significantly smaller, but then we also have an extra 4 books because in the background of all of this, if you guys haven't noticed throughout Shelve It or Scrap It, I have not read a single Fairy Loot Romantasy book for this entire series, even though I'm unboxing them every month, because I have been keeping them separately, not on shelves though, in a separate pile, because I wanted to do a separate video series with them, which I have referenced a couple of times in this video. It is the Romantasy Rundown. But now that that is all filmed and it's all done, there were a handful of those books that I wanted to shelve, which means that a handful of books have come off the shelves and will also be joining the stack. So I think I have something like 14 books to add. So we're not going to be starting the next episode in a great place, but I'm hoping that it will be a high volume episode to hopefully kind of balance that out a little bit. And then going forward, I think we do need to make some forward progress in this project. I'm still loving doing it though, and I think that is the main thing. And I'm still enjoying the process of like clearing through some of the older stuff or things that I'm unsure about on my TBR. But that does bring us to the end of episode 15. So I do hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far, because it is long as fuck. But if you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.